Chapter 881. Mission completed. Reward, Cannibal Trees. The smoke mission was undoubtedly completed perfectly, and the reward was immediately released. List did not know what a cannibal tree was for the time being and did not pay much attention to it. At this time, his mood was still immersed in the joy of the fourth dragon. The smoke mission instantly turned into a new serpentine. Mission: perfectly complete the second dragon-slaying war. Your name will shake the entire legendary continent. The sea will tremble when it hears your name. Now that the battle is over, the matter is not over. Why not punish the traitor in sapphire by yourself? Reward: Elven Figure. Punishing the traitor. This mission is simple. Elven Figure. What is the reward? List thought about it, but he had no clue, so he decisively gave up. In many cases, the reward of the smoke mission was a supplement to the content of the mission. One could examine the mission itself through the clues of the reward. But most of the time, the reward had little to do with the mission. For example, there was no connection between this smoke mission and the reward, so there was no need to think about it. When the mission was completed, he would naturally know what the elven figure was. I'm going to sleep. I'll return directly to Black Horse Island tomorrow and then bring a message to Sapphire Grand Duke. Although he did not participate in the dragon-slaying war, I don't believe that he will be unaware of the dragon-slaying war that took place inside Sapphire. It's not so easy to reap the benefits. And List's prediction was not wrong. In the Blue Sky Mountain Raising Palace, the Sapphire Grand Duke was listening to the Rat Leader's report about the situation on Hot Spring Island. The Eagle Kingdom's Dragon Knights have withdrawn, and the Count of Hot Spring Island has taken action to wipe out the traces on the island. However, our rats have discovered another wave of rats active on Hot Spring Island. Is it the rats under the Flame Marquee? It's very likely. They have been inquiring about the transportation of materials on Hot Spring Island from the beginning. Obviously, they know the news that the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom is stationed on Hot Spring Island. So this dragon-slaying war ended with the death of the Purple Copper Grand Duke? Sapphire Grand Duke sat in the main seat, his eyes deep. No one knew what he was thinking about. Prince Anthony sat next to him and wanted to say something, but he did not dare to interrupt the conversation between the Grand Duke and the Rat Leader. The Rat Chieftain replied, "We haven't managed to gather any deeper information yet. Everything in the Flame territory is operating normally. However, on the night of the dragon-slaying battle, the Flame Marquis returned to Thorn Castle to rest for the night. If this subordinate's deduction is correct, the Flame Marquis won the dragon-slaying battle." Fire Dragon, Light Emerald Dragon? How did he defeat the 3 Dragon Knights, Alex, Alonso, and Lure, as well as the 5 dragons? The Grand Duke muttered to himself, unable to understand. Anthony could not help but interrupt. "Father, do you believe this result? No matter how strong the Flame Marquis is, do you think he can contend against a 5-headed dragon? I can't see through it and I can't figure it out either. However, I do know one thing. Since the Flame Territory's rats were active on the Hot Spring Island in advance, it means that List already knew about their situation. He could calmly prepare himself whether he should hide or stand out. Lure's results also prove this point. But, no buts. The Grand Duke interrupted what Anthony was about to say. He coughed and a deep exhaustion appeared on his aged face. The current situation is that Alex and the other Dragon Knight were forced to leave. They lost the dragon-slaying battle or else the news would have spread. He paused to let his breathing become smoother. And we have to face the Flame Marquis List, who won the dragon-slaying battle. He is the future king of the Flame Kingdom. King of the Flame Kingdom? He really dares to give himself a title. Anthony said indignantly. To be able to win 2 dragon-slaying battles, he has the qualifications to become the new overlord of the sea and the new king of the Flame Kingdom. The sea is no longer peaceful, and it is time for the Sapphire family to make a choice. Anthony, this country will ultimately be handed over to your hands. What do you think we should choose? This? Anthony originally had a lot of things to say, but the words stuck in his throat. Why don't we destroy the Hot Spring Island first, stabilize the Flame Marquis, and then send someone to contact the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family? Once the Flame Kingdom is established, the Iron and Steel Ridge should not be able to sit still. Don't interfere with the Hot Spring Island. List has already noticed the Hot Spring Island. Leave it to him to deal with it personally and also test his thoughts. We are in an awkward position, Anthony. External forces will never last. All we can rely on is the Sapphire Dragon. Moreover, Sapphire Grand Duke felt a little bitter in his heart. He had signed an offensive and defensive alliance with List, but he watched the fire from the other side. This young Dragon Knight was not someone who could be easily dismissed. After returning to Black Horse Island, Liszt arranged for Duke Piero. The other party was a Sky Knight at the perfect level, and his strength was not weak. Therefore, although he could enjoy good treatment, the necessary shackles still had to be put on him. As for the Grey Iron Dragon Orn, he was not brought to Black Horse Island. Instead, he was temporarily placed on the Heart Island to recuperate. Orn had already woken up. He was still a little conflicted about the fact that he was being ridden and remained silent. However, he accepted the potion that Liszt gave him and acquiesced to his relationship with Liszt. No matter how the battle of the soul was won, as long as the victory was won, the proud character of the dragon would not deny the Dragon Knight. Subsequently, without stopping, Liszt went to Coral Island Tulip Castle and saw the Marquis of Oxtail. "Father, there is something I need to give you to deal with." "What is it?" "The day before yesterday, there was a dragon-slaying battle on the Northern Sea." Liszt simply explained the battle without deliberately exaggerating the situation, and without using a ups and downs tone. But when the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper died, the Grey Iron Duke was captured, and the Grey Iron Dragon Orn became Liszt's mount. Such news was casually said, and the Marquis of Oxtail was still shocked and speechless for a long time. Until Liszt quietly drank a cup of tea. He tried to digest the news and restore his father's dignity. "You said that 5 dragons besieged you, but you killed a Dragon Knight and captured one of the Iron Dragons. In the blink of an eye, 2 vassal states of the Eagle Kingdom faced the risk of collapse, while you were unscathed. As you can see, I am now very healthy." "This is too sudden, Liszt. If I hadn't seen you standing here, I would have doubted whether you were my son or not. Although I consider myself talented, I never thought that my son could have such a glorious achievement. You are far more legendary than what is described in the Night novels. In the Night novels, the protagonist would at most ride a dragon and have a carefree ending. Liszt, on the other hand, was constantly riding dragons at the rate of 2 dragons a year. Perhaps the sea needs a king to stand up, and I happen to be the choice." He spoke with rare humility. "Father, the stance of the Sapphire family in this dragon-slaying battle leaves me bitterly disappointed. As allies who watch and help each other, they sit by and watch the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom, which seriously infringes on my interests. What do you want to do?" "To be honest, I haven't thought about it, but if I can't vent this anger, I will feel very uncomfortable. You know that I already have 4 dragons and I don't mind adding another one. You have to give me a bottom line so that I can talk to the Grand Duke about this matter. The resources needed to support 4 dragons are massive, and the Grand Duchy of Sapphire must pay a part of it. But the most important thing is the attitude. The Fire Kingdom is about to be established, and I still lack a vassal state. You want Sapphire to be your vassal state?" Lee William was surprised. Chapter 882. Captain Marcus, gather all the orders of chivalry on the island and follow me to Hot Spring Island. Liszt pointed with his sword, and Black Horse Island suddenly boiled. "As you wish, your highness." Marcus was inexplicably excited. He was now a baron. 4 years ago, he was just a civilian without a title, following a lord with no future and going to the declining and dilapidated Flower Town. He never thought that one day he would walk on familiar ground as a baron. Looking at Liszt's shadow in the sun, his heart was filled with infinite loyalty and reverence, because he understood that all this was given by the young lord in front of him. Compared with 4 years ago, the young lord had already shed his childishness and become an indomitable dragon knight. Now the young lord had won the second battle of the dragon and was now going to clean up the traitors and spread the inviolable glory of the Dragon Knight. Marcus quickly conveyed Liszt's decree, summoned the various knight squads, and issued a war mobilization. He was not strong, just an elite Earth Knight, but he had a high position of power. Everyone knew that he was Liszt's spokesperson and in charge of the most elite flower orders of chivalry. It was not only the knight of the flower orders of chivalry who was gathering, but all the Earth Knight who stayed on Black Horse Island were gathering in the direction of the dock. In fact, Liszt alone could eradicate the Count of Hot Spring Island, but he still did all the Knight in the territory. Whether old or weak, as long as it was an Earth Knight, they were mobilized, looking for weapons and equipment and boarding fast sailboats. The dock could already produce fast 2-masted sailboats, but the 3-masted fast sailboats had not yet been fully mastered. "Your Highness, will the patrols also be dispatched?" Paris came to ask, riding a black blood horse. As a light magic swordsman at the same level as the Sky Knight and the Great Magician, her strength has grown rapidly in recent years, and she can already fight against a sword saint without falling behind. She was an early confidant of Liszt. Currently she only had the title of Baron, which made Liszt somewhat dissatisfied. Although this plump and beautiful female follower was not very smart, she was very much appreciated and trusted by him. He hoped that he could promote her to a high position as soon as possible to keep the captive faction in check. The captive faction was a thought in List's mind. It referred to the Sky Knight's followers who were captured from the Eagle Kingdom. There were many of them and they were very strong. It was easy for them to form cliques. Sift through the patrol group. All the Earth Knights will go to battle. Paris, not only your patrol group, but Charles's security group also needs to send the Earth Knight. Going to the Hot Spring Island is the best reward I can give to the old people who have followed me. Your Highness, you are a lord who cherishes old friendships. You deserve the loyalty of every knight, Paris said respectfully. There was still a hint of uncontrollable love in her eyes. No woman would not be tempted by the Dragon Knight, not to mention that the Dragon Knight was so handsome and tall. If the Grand Duchy of Sapphire published something like, the sexiest male knight in the eyes of the women in the country, List would definitely be elected with full votes. The glory belongs to me. I am with you. List reached out and patted Paris on the shoulder. Seeing this light magic great swordsman, he thought of the light dragon that lived in the Maple Mountain of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf. It was a huge dragon with a length of 80 meters. It was powerful and unpredictable. No dragon knight dared to strangle this dragon and achieve the title of Dragon Slayer Hero. List was in the mood to join in the fun. But the time was not right yet. It was not the right time to go out and mess around. But then again he was currently a dragon knight who achieved a double kill. The light green gem dragon knight, Carl Low Violet, and the purple copper dragon knight, Lloyd Purple Copper, all died in his hands. This record was considered glorious among the dragon knight. After all, most dragon knights died of old age. It was rare to die in battle. Your Highness, Charles reports to you. The security group has gathered all the Earth Knights. They are ready to fight at any time. Charles Trapp rushed over quickly. His enthusiasm for battle achievements was far greater than Paris's. Paris was a woman and a bit lazy. Moreover, her strength was already comparable to a sword saint. Sooner or later she would become a high-ranking noble. Charles, the elite Earth Knight, was different. He had to seize every opportunity to achieve battle achievements. Commander Paris, Commander Charles, since the orders of chivalry have been gathered, you will board the ship immediately and listen to Commander Marcus's command. Yes, Your Highness. For a time, 5 orders of chivalry were gathered on Black Horse Island. The orders of chivalry led by Marcus, the orders of chivalry formed by Sky Knight Derek Iron and Joyce Dandelion respectively, and the alternative orders of chivalry formed by Paris and Charles. Only one Sky Knight, Spec, was left in the territory to be responsible for security. The 5 orders of chivalry boarded the ship and set off in the direction of Hot Spring Island. On the other side, Tulip Castle also gathered a large number of knights and rushed to Cube Island to clear the Cube Island Viscount. However, Marquis Oxtail did not personally participate. He had set off for Blue Dragon Island, ready to negotiate with Sapphire Grand Duke about matters related to the Second Dragon-slaying war. Behind him stood his son riding a 4-headed dragon. Ignoring the shocks, he had never felt so good. Hot Spring Island. The Count was rubbing a batch of treasures in the cellar. These were all sent by the Eagle Kingdom. He risked his life to become a trader, so naturally he needed to get a high reward. It's really beautiful. This Crystal Helen statue is definitely made by the top crystal craftsman in the Eagle Kingdom. It's so beautiful that it's like it's alive. Ah, great Crystal Helen, you once guided the Moon Empire forward. Now, are you willing to guide this lost knight to your heart? He closed his eyes as if intoxicated in a psychedelic love. There was an extremely beautiful woman hugging and kissing him. Clatter. Woo 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 woo. An emergency horn suddenly sounded over the castle, interrupting the Count of Hot Spring Island from his fantasy. Just as he was about to burst into anger, he suddenly remembered that this horn was a warning sound that would only be sounded when the territory was being invaded. What's going on? He hurriedly wrapped the half-man-tall Crystal Helen statue in soft cloth, then rushed out of the cellar angrily and shouted at the knight who was hurriedly lining up outside. My lord, it's the Flame Territory's orders of chivalry. A knight captain rushed over on horseback and hurriedly replied, the Flame Territory's orders of chivalry have invaded our Hot Spring Island. They have already conquered the seaside city of Sand City and are now rushing towards the Hot Spring Castle. My lord, please get ready for battle. Flame Territory? The Count's heart skipped a beat, then contracted violently. It was April, but he felt like he had fallen into a 9-story ice cellar. He felt a bone-chilling coldness. Flame Territory. List Flame. Dragon-slaying battle. Has it happened? before he could figure out the situation. In the distance, the knight who was lining up to face the enemy suddenly exclaimed, "Dragon! It's a dragon! Fire dragon, the fire dragon of the Marquis of the Flame Territory. Why is the Flame Territory attacking our hot spring island? Isn't he afraid of the Grand Duke's punishment? It's over, it's over. The Dragon Knight is attacking personally." In the midst of the exclamations, the figure of a fire dragon appeared in the sky. Its 30-meter-wide wingspan gently flapped, wrapped in boundless flames, and spread towards the hot spring castle. There was no breathing, no impact, just the flames set off by its wings, aimed at the hot spring castle and burned. The horses neighed, and all the knight in the line fled with their heads in their hands. The hot spring castle's orders of chivalry did not resist and completely dissipated. The fire dragon swept over the castle. Liszt, who was riding on the dragon's back, glanced at the tall castle, his eyes very indifferent. Behind him, the 5 orders of chivalry of Black Horse Island assembled to charge. The torrent of chi instantly submerged the hot spring castle. In one corner of the battlefield, Paris, Derek Iron Armor, and Joyce Dandelion flew up and rushed towards the Count of Hot Spring Island, who was preparing to escape, and blasted him back. Everything. Chapter 883. The traitor must die, but before the trial, the Earl of Hot Spring was not killed, but was arrested. Then he began to summon his territory to orders of chivalry. Punishing the traitor was just a gimmick. What Liszt really needed were the resources of Hot Spring Island, material resources and human resources. The betrayal of the Earl of Hot Spring Island gave him an excuse to rob resources openly. At this moment, standing in the cellar, looking at the dazzling treasures, Liszt asked the Earl of Hot Spring, whose hands and feet were tied, with great interest. "The Eagle Kingdom is really willing to spend so much. So many treasures are given to you. I often go to the Tulip family's cellar, but it's not even 1/10 of the treasures you have here. Tell me, when did they instigate you to become a spy in Sapphire?" "Your Highness, I am willing to dedicate all my wealth to you, and my family and I are also willing to follow you for life," the Earl of Hot Springs said hurriedly. "And then, continue to be a spy." "How can that be, Your Highness? I am really willing to change. I will turn over a new leaf and follow you forever." This kind of nonsense was really meaningless, but the Earl of Hot Spring had to say it, even if there was only a slight chance of being forgiven. However, Liszt did not care about any of his statements. It was too degrading to bargain with a dead man, not to mention that he was a real dragon knight. "When did you become a spy in the Kingdom of Eagle?" 10 years ago, my son was captured by the Kingdom of Eagle when he participated in the Expansion War. Since then, I have been His Highness Alonso's spy. But Your Highness, I did not do anything to betray the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Your father, Marquis Oxtail, and I are old friends. Receiving the Dragon Knight of the Kingdom of Eagle and launching a dragon-slaying war against me, is this also called no betrayal? This? I didn't know why they came here. I just thought they were looking for something." The Earl of Hot Springs' forehead was sweating. He knew that the lie was full of loopholes, but he still had to brace himself and continue. "What is this?" Liszt suddenly noticed the crystal statue that was half a man's height. The crystal statue seemed to be a pink crystal, which was probably a byproduct of pink rubies. However, this statue was very complete. Its entire body was transparent and without any flaws. It was obvious that it was a very high-quality associated ore. The carved figure was that of a magician, wearing a tight-fitting magic robe. Although the crystal was pink and transparent, the facial features and figure of the statue could be said to be perfect. Even though Liszt was used to a delicate siren like a chi, he couldn't help but be amazed by the sorcerer in the statue. She was sexy, beautiful, and dignified. In particular, the transparency of the crystal combined with the angle of the sculpture made it seem as if the person in the sculpture was a living person, looking at him with a faint smile. Opening magic eyes, he could see that every line on the statue's clothes was a magic line, and there were traces of magic arrays. This was a magic equipment. "It's Crystal Helen." The Count of Hot Springs sounded lost and confused, but he soon came back to himself. "Your Highness, this is the most precious treasure in my collection. It was made by a top crystal master, who worked with a sorcerer to build it into a treasure that combines beauty and magic." Crystal Helen? Liszt seemed to have heard this name before. The Count of Hot Spring was still enthusiastically introducing. "It is not only beautiful but also has a special effect. When it is placed in the castle, it will comb the wandering magic of the castle, making people feel relaxed and happy. Ordinary people bathed in her aura will be free from diseases and disasters. and knight and sorcerers can enjoy the convenience of cultivation. He paused. The Count of Hot Springs seemed to be giving up his beloved woman. I am willing to offer it to your highness. Only your highness is qualified to enjoy such a treasure. Who is Crystal Helen? List suddenly asked. Well, she is a legendary empress of the Moon Empire, the supreme leader of the sorcerers. Her beauty makes the moon lose its color, and even dragons are awed by her beauty and are willing to be driven by her. I remember now. List nodded. He had read a magic book that mentioned the Empress of the Moon Empire. Although the Moon Empire was a world ruled by sorcerers, it was also an imperial system and a slave system. One of the empresses was called Helen Truth, and she loved crystals very much. Because of her beauty, the magicians who fell in love with her had built a crystal palace for her. Pillars, roofs, arches, steps, including thrones, tables, chairs, clothes, carriages, cutlery, and even toilets, were all made of crystal. It was ridiculous. However, the legend of the Moon Empire was already very vague. No one knew if the Crystal Palace really existed. Even the existence of Crystal Helen was doubtful. The statue in front of him was a very good decoration. Of course, Liszt would accept it and move it back to his castle to add to the artistic atmosphere of the castle. Pack it all up and take it away. He waved his hand and gave the order. As for the Count of Hot Spring, after he introduced the origin and function of the collection, he could be taken to the execution ground and prepared to be hanged. Usually, a noble knight could buy his freedom with a ransom, but it was not suitable for traitors. Back then, the Sapphire Grand Duke had set off a round of bloody purges on the Iron Hoof Island. Liszt killed the count and lord with the same ease. In front of the square of the Hot Spring Castle, many of the incorporated knight came to watch. A Black Horse Island official read the count's crimes in front of the gallows. The Count of Hot Spring Island is despicable, killed a knight, abused civilians, colluded with the Kingdom of Eagle, assassinated a Grand Duchy Marquis, and conspired against the Flame Territory. His crimes are heinous and unforgivable. He shall be hanged immediately. After the crimes were read, the Count of Hot Spring Island was hanged alive in front of all the knights' hearts. Some of his servants and confidants were also hanged on the gallows for various crimes. It was not known if there was hell or some other place where the dead went, where they could continue to follow the Count of Hot Spring Island. Liszt stood on the balcony of the Hot Spring Castle. He wanted to see the hanging clearly. Marcus was at his side, reporting the materials harvested from the Hot Spring Castle. The Count of Hot Spring Island was an old count, and he also colluded with the Kingdom of Eagle. His wealth was astonishing. There were a lot of gems, jade, gold coins, and other resources. There were also a lot of sprites, 1 great sprite, 16 lesser sprites, and 136 sprite worms. They were all contracted to his son. However, they would soon be handed over to Liszt one by one. The knight and serfs on the island also began to count them one after another. When the time comes, those who should immigrate to Flame Island will directly immigrate there. The remaining assets that cannot be taken away can be bought back by the Sapphire family. The harvest is really rich. This kind of thing makes money quickly. Liszt thought happily. Compared to the gray-mouthed iron dragon harvested in the dragon-slaying war, these resources were nothing. But after all, there was only one iron dragon, and the resources of the Hot Spring Island were dazzling and varied, giving people more stimulation. Chapter 884. 1 corn sprite, a cereal sprite, was of high value. There were 5 corn sprites, 2 barley sprites, and 1 wheat sprite. They were all grains and were very valuable. 1 jasmine sprite, 1 half lotus sprite, and 1 magic ingredient sprite were of high value. 1 tomato sprite, 1 apple sprite were of good value, 1 black tea sprite, as a common source of tea fruits used by aristocrats, was of good value. 1 mangosteen sprite, 1 brocade sprite, and 1 stone sprite were of ordinary value, were of ornamental value. There were also 136 sprite worms, 10 of which were of high value, of which 10 were of the magic ingredient sprite. In short, the resources plundered from the Hot Spring Island were huge, which could be said to be enough for Liszt to eat until he was fat. These were all resources that could be put to use at this time. Let's call this sprite Tick, Doombringer Fettick. In League of Legends, Fettick was a scarecrow. When Liszt saw that the farmland around the Hot Spring Castle was full of corn and many scarecrows, he gave the corn great sprite a new name. The only regret was that the corn great sprite Tick was already 150 years old. Based on the lifespan of a great sprite of 200 years, it could live for another 50 years. Moreover, its character was a bit stiff. The Count of the Hot Spring Island treated the sprites as tools, so the sprites were very dull. They were not lively enough. But now, after becoming List's sprites, they would enjoy a better life, a happy and comfortable living environment. The Count of the Hot Spring Island had 4 Viscount followers. Originally, List planned to take advantage of the situation to wipe them out, but the 4 Viscounts reacted too quickly. Without waiting for the Flame Lord's orders of chivalry to attack, they all knelt in front of List. Using the excuse of ignorance, they begged List's forgiveness and took advantage of the situation to pledge allegiance to the new lord. One after another, they declared that they were willing to migrate Flame Island and develop a new island for the Flame family. Seeing their former lord being hanged to death, they couldn't bring themselves to take revenge at all. After all, the enemy they were facing was the Dragon Knight. As for the Earl of Hot Spring Island and the Kingdom of Eagle, it was hard for them to not know, and they had no intention of being loyal to the Earl of Hot Spring Island. The knight prided himself on his loyalty, but under the premise that he could buy himself back with a ransom, how much loyalty could he have? Interests were the only value that the nobles pursued tirelessly. Anyway, at the top of the city wall there was a huge royal flag. But apart from the fall of the former owner of the Hot Spring Island, there were not many changes. After the knights were incorporated, they were still stationed on the Hot Spring Island, and the serfs still had to farm. Of course, immigration would still be implemented, but it would have to wait until the magic transmission array was opened. Currently, they did not have the ability to transport manpower and resources from Hot Spring Island to Flame Island. Furthermore, the spring plowing had already passed, and they could not delay the growth of the crops. After the Hot Spring Castle was cleaned, it became List's palace. The elves were still kept here, but there were special servants and night guards here. List stayed here for 2 days and then he got up and left. He had to deliver new food to Fire City. Although a batch of potatoes had just been harvested, the population had soared to 300,000 due to the absorption of the moon killers throughout the winter. Orders of chivalry were busy collecting food in the forest, but they still could not sustain the growing food consumption. While List was happily plundering the spoils of war, Prince Alex, who lost the Battle of the Dragon Slaying, took Alonso and the dragons and directly returned to the capital of the Kingdom of Eagle. It was not clear what happened to the Grey Iron Dragon and Duke Piero. The news of the return of the Dragon Knight was not leaked, and only some people in the palace knew. The king summoned Prince Alex and Marquis Alonso in the palace. When the body of the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper was carried into the hall, the king raised his eyebrows directly, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Subsequently, he heard the whole story of the dragon-slaying battle from Alex. So, Grand Duke Lure died in battle, and the dragon-slaying battle that cost a lot of national power failed again? The King of Eagle had a thick beard that covered his expression, and his eyes did not have much color, as if he was asking about an insignificant matter. But Alex and Alonso, who were familiar with the king, knew that the other side was angry to the extreme. Alonso directly knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty, Alonso is incompetent and delayed the kingdom's war. I am willing to accept your Majesty's punishment." As a prince, Alex did not need to kneel, he just cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, I am not shirking my responsibility, but the reason for the failure of this dragon-slaying battle is more because of the appearance of the invisible dragon. No one could have thought that List had an invisible dragon as a mount." Invisible dragon. The King of Eagles slammed the scepter in his hand on the floor. "Which one of you can tell me why the holy dragon was born in the aquamarine sea, and why it fell into the hands of List?" At this time, the excuse of the knight's glory and the like obviously could not fool him. Alonso said in a deep voice, "If I am not wrong, List has already mastered the ruins of the ancient Moon Empire era. The legend of the Holy Dragon was active in the Moon Empire era, and it has not appeared for many years. The birth of high mages is definitely related to the ruins of the Moon Empire. The shrinking of the weave was not unfamiliar news to the Dragon Knight. And the promotion of a new high mage did not mean that the weave was restored, so Alonso believed that Achi's promotion was achieved by relying on the ruins of the Moon Empire era. This guess could not be wrong. It was indeed through the tears of the mermaid that Achi came into contact with the weave and laid the foundation for her promotion. And the Temple of Fish Clown was more or less related to the Moon Empire. It was also not wrong to say that it was the ruins of the Moon Empire era. It was just that they all ignored List's personal reasons. All his strength came from his personal struggle. After all, the smoke mission was part of his body, and the power of fate had long been integrated with him. But strictly speaking, the death of the smoke dragon and the survival of the power of fate seemed to be related to the ancient Moon Empire. Alonso's guess was not wrong in the general direction. The Moon Empire. An ancient empire that has been decaying for who knows how many years. Alonso, do you think this reason can convince me? The Eagle King's tone turned cold. For this dragon-slaying war, the kingdom has spent a lot of resources and used many connections. Now tell me how much the kingdom has suffered from the failure of the dragon-slaying war. Your Majesty, please punish me. Will punishing you help things? At this moment, the Eagle King still did not know that there was a problem with the Grey Iron Dragon. The Purple Copper Grand Duchy has always been the western barrier of the kingdom. Grand Duke Lure was my strong supporter, but he is dead. How can I explain this to my aunt and cousin? The Eagle King's cousin was Lure's wife, the Grand Duchess. Prince Alex sighed. This matter was not timely enough. Your Majesty, please allow me to personally escort the body of Grand Duke Lure back to the Purple Copper Grand Duchy. No matter what the Purple Copper family requests, I will do my best to satisfy them. The Eagle King looked at Alex and did not speak. After a long time he sighed faintly. Alonso, get up. Tomorrow return to the border and continue to guard. As for Grand Duke Lure's sacrifice, I will personally contact my aunt. Now, I need you to immediately come up with a response. I want to know how to stop List's growth. He paused. Chapter 885. The dragon-slaying battle on Dodo Island did not happen in public, so the nobles of Sapphire Isles did not know about this great war. However, the Knights of the Fire Territory did not hide the fact that they had publicly destroyed the Hot Spring Island. After the merchants on the island and the rats in the dark spread the news, it spread to the ears of all the nobles in the Sapphire Archipelago within a week. What's going on? Why did the Marquis of the Flame destroy Hot Spring Island? Even the Dragon Knight can't be so reckless. Is the Grand Duke not doing anything? The Count of Hot Spring Island is an upright and sincere man. The Marquis of the Flame is indeed powerful, but he can't bully the weak like this. This is trampling on the dignity of a knight. Many nobles and lords did not dare to comment on this matter in public, but after socializing, they would inevitably use the excuse of being drunk to criticize the Flame Territory for bullying the weak. There were even nobles and lords who spoke directly to the Sapphire Grand Duke, hoping that the Grand Duke would step in and stop this matter. However, just as the news of the Flame Territory destroying Hot Spring Island spread, merchants and rats quickly brought new explosive news. The Oxtail Marquis orders of chivalry to destroy Cube Island within a day. The attack was carried out openly, without any concealment, and without the permission of the Marquis of Deep Throat Island. The Viscount of Cube Island was the follower of the Marquis of Deep Throat Island, Wallace Pineapple Green. Destroying him naturally required Wallace's permission, or else it would be considered a provocation. On the other side, the Dragon Knight List publicly destroyed the follower of another Dragon Knight. On the other side, the Marquis of Oxtail publicly destroyed the follower of another Marquis. This caused the public opinion of Sapphire Isles to boil. What are the Marquis of Oxtail and the Marquis of the Flame trying to do? I've dealt with Lee William before. He's a loyal and upright knight. Why would he do such a thing? If Marquis Wallace offended the Marquis of Oxtail and attacked the Viscount of Cube Island as a punishment, it would make sense. But the Marquis of the Flame destroying the Count of Hot Spring Island, what does this mean? Could it be that the Tulip family wants to turn against the Grand Duke? The Grand Duke can't sit idly by, or else the Tulip family will rely on the Dragon Knight and the High Mage to overthrow Sapphire's rule. We must advise the Grand Duke. However, before these discussions had even begun, Ma Huiying's orders of chivalry's night had already passed on the Sapphire Grand Duke's edict to all the major island lords. A jaw-dropping piece of news exploded. The Master of the Azure Wave Sea, the Lord of the Sapphire Islands, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke, hereby announces to all his followers and knight that the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island have colluded with the Eagle Kingdom and provided assistance to the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom's 5 dragons and 3 knight. They have assassinated the Marquis of the Flame and started the dragon-slaying war. The Marquis of the Flame put up a strong resistance. He ended up killing the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper and repelled the Eagle Kingdom's evil plan. He also quickly destroyed the 2 traitors, the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island. The Marquis of the Flame and the Marquis of Oxtail pursue loyalty, justice, courage and fearlessness. This is an excellent display of the noble qualities of a knight. At the same time, the detailed news released by the merchants of the Flame Territory, the Oxtail Territory, and the Rat quickly spread. Every dragon-slaying war was the best headline news of the year. There was no need to expend any effort to publicize it. It would naturally cause an explosion. the White Iron Dragon Knight Alex White Iron, the Bronze Dragon Knight Alonso Cyclamen, the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper, the Grey Iron Dragon, the Silver Dragon, and the 5 dragons and 3 knight joined forces to besiege the Marquis of the Flame. However, the Great Fire Dragon Knight, the Formless Dragon Knight, and the Light Green Gemstone Dragon Knight List of the Flame killed Lure and defeated the 5 dragons. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The dragon-slaying war on Dodo Island involved 8 dragons. His Highness List occupied 3 dragons and defeated the 5 dragons and the knight. His strength is boundless. The Formless Dragon is a holy dragon, the legendary Holy Dragon. He's too powerful. The knight is blessed by glory. His Highness the Marquis of the Flame is not a son of glory. He is glory itself. How terrifying. The Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Square Island colluded with the Eagle Kingdom. The traitors must die. The Marquis of the Flame destroyed them in a righteous war. Marquis Wallace personally thanked Marquis Oxtail, thanking him for destroying the Viscount of Square Island, the traitor. Who can tell me if this is true? Why is His Highness List recognized by the 3 dragons? Is he the embodiment of the knight's glory? In an instant, the nobles and feudal lords who originally had opinions about List destroying the Count of Hot Spring Island changed their opinions one after another. They wanted to praise List 24 hours a day. They were afraid that their previous complaints would reach List's ears. If List was just a dragon knight, he would have a magic shooter as his helper. They could still rely on the Sapphire Grand Duke to back up some of their verbal accusations. These accusations were to protect the interests of the aristocratic class, and they also hoped that the Grand Duke would treat them favorably. But the news that had arrived was too terrifying. List had actually ridden on 3 dragons alone, killed a dragon knight, and defeated 3 dragon knight and 5 dragons of the Eagle Kingdom by himself. Coupled with the gorgeous fighting style of the magic shooter, such a tyrannical, cool and heaven-defying configuration. It could be said that even if the Sapphire family was destroyed, no one would dare say a word. Although the world ruled by the knight system had a relatively strict order and rules, when one's strength reached a certain level, so what if one broke the rules? The Master of the Sea has changed. Marquis Wallace Pineapple stood at the bow of the ship, his heart feeling weak and haggard. As early as when the Tulip family had swept through Cube Island, he had personally led orders of chivalry to deal with them and question the leader, Levis. What is the meaning of the Tulip family? What is your father's meaning? Killing my followers for no reason. Levis, who rarely participated in wars, mainly came to get military achievements. But he had become a Sky Knight after all, and he had cultivated a calm demeanor. He calmly replied, Marquis Wallace, my orders are from His Highness List, the Dragon Knight. There might be some news that you don't know, but His Highness List has killed another Dragon Knight. He only spoke briefly about the dragon-slaying battle. Then Wallace's expression fluctuated between green and white, turning into a faint sigh. He did not say anything more before turning around and leaving, no longer concerned about the survival of Cube Island. That night, Wallace took a ship to Blue Dragon Island. When he arrived at Blue Dragon Island, he saw Sapphire Grand Duke and Oxtail Marquis drinking tea in the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. Accompanying them were Duchess Sarit Grandflower Huilon, eldest Prince Anthony, Marquis Glendonton Maple Leaf of Maple City, and Marquis Nesta Grandflower Huilon of Quicksand City. It could be said that all the higher-ups of the Sapphire family were drinking tea with Lee William. Such a high standard was simply inconceivable. When he saw this scene, Wallace already understood that the Sapphire family no longer had the final say in the sea. After staying in the Blue Sky Mountain Palace for a night and receiving an edict personally written by the Grand Duke, Wallace left Blue Dragon Island with flagging interest and returned to his territory. He felt that he was getting old, and it was time to retire and enjoy his old age, no longer participating in the struggle for power among the nobles. The former Marquis of Red Crab Island, Merlin Longtaro, had been the companion of Sapphire Grand Duke since he was young. How could Wallace Pineapple not be loyal since he was young? The Master of the Sea has changed. Looking at the title at the beginning of the edict, Wallace once again sighed with emotion in his heart. In the past, the Sapphire Grand Duke's official letters all began with the title, Master of the Sea, Lord of all Islands, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke. But now the edict was Master of the Aquamarine Waves Sea, Lord of the Sapphire Archipelago, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke. From the sea to the Aquamarine Waves Sea, from all islands to the Sapphire Archipelago. The meaning was self-evident. Chapter 886. The land area was too large and it was inconvenient to transmit information. The news that Piero Greysteel had been captured and that the Greysteel dragon had become List's mount had not yet spread. In fact, the result of the dragon-slaying battle had just been brewed among the higher-ups of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the Eagle Kingdom. Of course, the rats of the major kingdoms and duchies had already brought the news back home. It would not be long before the northeastern corner of the entire legendary continent would be completely boiling. Some people felt uneasy, some listened to the story, some worshipped madly, and some were inexplicably jealous. These were all normal operations. However, List was destined to add firewood. The reason was simple. He himself was quite low-key, but after completing the mission to punish the traitor, he issued a rather high-profile new mission. Mission: the Grand Duchy of Sapphire has begun to praise your name, and the higher-ups of the Eagle Kingdom are also conspiring to curb your growth. But a real man is not afraid of the dirty business in the dark. It's time to ride the Greysteel dragon and visit the Blue Dragon Island, and let the Sapphire family make the right choice. Reward: the first vassal country to surrender. Obviously, the Sapphire Grand Duke was still hesitating. This was also a matter of course. List's previous generations had been followers of the Sapphire family. But one day their identities were reversed, and the Sapphire family was to become followers of List. From the perspective of interests, List, who had a multi-headed dragon and a magic shooter, already had the qualifications to be a king. It was logical for a duchy to surrender to a kingdom, and they were all countries on the sea. But from the emotional aspect it was extremely difficult. Another point was that the Sapphire family still had expectations for the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family. They hoped to be able to strike a balance between the Iron and Steel Ridge kingdom and the future Fire Kingdom. They were not willing to casually change sides. The Sapphire Grand Duke's idea is not excessive. Although he belongs to the treacherous side in terms of offensive and defensive alliance, he is, after all, the lord that the Tulip family has followed for generations. Being too harsh and forcing the family's reputation is not good. It was reasonable. The relationship between the Sapphire family and the Tulip family was good. The Tulip family had never betrayed them, and the Sapphire family had never treated them harshly. This friendship had to be taken into account. Otherwise, List's reputation would be terrible after his rise. Reputation was just icing on the cake most of the time. However, as a noble family and a top-notch dragon-rearing family at that, they still had to rely on the knight system to maintain their rule. They still needed to add to their reputation. Then I'll ride on the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Orn and go to Blue Dragon Island to deal with the situation. Let the Sapphire Grand Duke judge the situation himself. He looked at the smoke mission and decided. After the delivery of the food, they traveled through space and arrived at the Heart Island. The gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Aon, who was recuperating from his injuries, had almost recovered. He did not suffer from the heavy injuries that the light green gemstone dragon had suffered previously. Instead, he only suffered some external injuries. Hence, with the strong recovery ability of a dragon, he recovered very quickly. However, it would take some time to replenish the depleted Supreme Dragon Demon. Normal riding and fighting were no longer a problem. Roar. Aon did not have a good impression of List. After all, he had forced himself on List to complete the soul battle. However, after erasing the first-generation Dragon Knight soul brand, Aon still accepted List as his Dragon Knight. Bard, carry a chi. I'll ride Aon. List arranged the mounts quickly. Woo. Bard did not reject a chi's ride. Of course, the Dragon Tooth platform was List's exclusive seat. No matter how much Bard liked a chi, he would not allow a chi to sit on it. Just like how the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon protected Piero, he did not have the right to sit on the Dragon Tooth platform. As such, a human and a dragon rode towards Blue Dragon Island. On List's chest was the little fire dragon Leo, who was in the form of magic power. Since he was going to Blue Dragon Island to show his authority, he might as well expose his trump card. If the light green gemstone dragon was not still on Flame Island, he would have brought 4 dragons with him. The general trend was already set. He did not care if he was exposed to the eyes of the various kingdoms on the legendary continent. The invisible dragon's combat power was not very outstanding, but its ability to travel through space was too strong. It was enough to ensure that he could escape from any dangerous situation. The smoke mission mentioned that the Eagle Kingdom was thinking about how to contain List's conspiracy. When the other kingdoms on the continent learned of the rise of List and the existence of a holy dragon like the Invisible Dragon, they would inevitably outline their conspiracies. But these conspiracies were nothing more than the dragon-slaying war and economic sanctions. No one could deal with the Invisible Dragon in the dragon-slaying war, and economic sanctions were even less effective. If List could not do business, he could go and rob. Robbing the hot spring island made him fat. If he went to the mainland kingdoms to rob a few marquises, wouldn't he become a big fat pig? He could even go and rob the Dragon Knight. A lone Dragon Knight was no match for him at all. With the luxurious lineup of himself, Bard, Leo, and Ichi, it was too easy to kill a lone Dragon Knight. If it was not for the fear of forcing the mainland kingdoms too far and making them reach an agreement to send out all the Dragon Knight to capture him, List would have developed this tactic long ago. Besides, I still have the smoke mission warning. He had a clear understanding of the situation on the continent. In the case of the Eagle Kingdom's 2 defeats in the dragon-slaying war, the other kingdoms would probably try to win him over. Maybe one of the kings would want to marry his daughter over. Of course, he didn't have too many thoughts about marrying the princess of a kingdom. What he wanted most now was not the surrender of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, but the reward of the previous smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, a cannibal tree dragon elf. This was the smoke serpentine prompt for the completion of the traitor punishment mission. When List transported food to Fire City, he went directly to Emily, who was repairing the road, and asked about his cannibal tree dragon elf. He had heard the magic platform's message report before. Emily was leading people to investigate the ogre incident, which was the reward of the previous smoke mission, traces of the ogre. Finally, they found the true culprit of the ogre, which was the reward of the previous smoke mission, cannibal trees. Finally, the third round of the mission about the ogre, which was the reward of the previous mission, cannibal tree dragon elf. Dragon elf. A dragon elf. Although this reward was much worse than the dragon reward, it was a shocking reward for List. He had an extraordinary desire for elves. He had long been looking forward to getting a dragon elf. After all, if a dragon-raising family didn't have a dragon elf, it would be too shameful. He originally thought that there wouldn't be any dragon elves in the wild. After all, the requirements for elves to evolve were too harsh. Great elves had to live with dragons for a long time to evolve into dragon elves. Dragons were extremely rare, and the ones that ended up in the wild were mostly evil dragons. How could they tolerate great elves approaching them? Therefore, he couldn't count on wild dragon elves, and snatching them wasn't realistic either. He could only nurture them himself. Phoenix Parasol Tree Great Elf Infant, who liked to touch small fire dragons, was the first dragon elf he was looking forward to. After a long time, Infant was still touching it and hadn't evolved. In the end, a chain mission that he didn't pay much attention to because of the dragon-slaying war suddenly rewarded him with a dragon elf, which made him pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, Emily and the others had been tracking the cannibal tree for a long time, but they hadn't found the dragon elf. According to Emily's conjecture, the cannibal tree could burrow into the ground. This dragon elf might be hiding underground. After List personally searched the forest 3 to 4 times to no avail, he ordered Emily to continue searching. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to find this dragon elf. What should come couldn't run away. Chapter 887. After searching upstream for a month in the dense forest, the night team led by Yevich finally found a place where humans lived. It was a small village with no knight, no elf, and no one planted crops. The men in the village lived by hunting, while the women collected wild fruits in the nearby mountains and raised a clumsy bird that looked like a chicken but was bigger and had brighter feathers. Confrontation and communication. Although they didn't speak the same language, they managed to communicate some information by making gestures. The villagers here did not know which country they were from, nor could they write. They only knew that they belonged to the bearded lord, and every year they had to submit a large amount of fur and fritillary to the bearded lord. The fritillary was a colorful big chicken whose meat was very delicate and smooth. After paying a few colorful shells, some hunters took Yevich and the others to the town where the bearded lord lived. In the dilapidated castle near the town, Yevich met the bearded lord. After some threatening gestures, the bearded lord, who was almost an earth knight, told Yevich his identity. He was the follower of a viscount of a marquis in the Snow Wind Duchy. He was not from the Eagle Kingdom, but a duchy that Yevich had never heard of. Snow Wind Duchy? Yevich drew a new question on a piece of paper he carried with him. Which kingdom does this duchy belong to? The bearded lord was amazed by the white paper in Yevich's hand. He took the paper and drew an abstract and complicated family emblem on it, and then wrote some strange words on it. He tried to translate the meaning of the words. It probably referred to a big plain with yellow stones. Yellowstone Plain Kingdom? Yevich suddenly realized. He had heard of this kingdom. It was in the southwest of the Eagle Kingdom and could be said to be a neighboring country. However, the Yellowstone Plain Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom were separated by a plateau covered by ice and snow all year round, and a large number of World of Warcraft lived there. The environment was extremely bad, so the two kingdoms rarely had contact. Between the two kingdoms, there were several duchies that had trade contacts with the Eagle Kingdom. However, Yevich had never heard of the Snow Wind Duchy. The south of the Eagle Kingdom was undeveloped and the environment was bad, so he didn't know there was a duchy here. He continued to communicate with Lord Stubble, but Lord Stubble was just a Lord Knight who had never traveled far, so his knowledge was limited. He didn't know where he was, but he knew that his Viscount lived further west, and it would take a day's ride to get there. And when he followed his Viscount Lord to help his superior Count Lord participate in the war, he had to ride for 5 days and cross several mountains. The further west one went, the colder the climate became, but the more fertile the land became. Further west was the territory of the Marquis, and further west was the true hinterland of the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. That's a little awkward. Sailing west from the third archipelago, apart from discovering a large island, they directly reached the mainland's coastline. His Highness asked me to find out the distribution of power here, but within a few hundred kilometers of the coastline, there are no signs of human habitation. How are we going to start a war in the future? He was referring to Sapphire's model. Sapphire had developed by robbing the Eagle Kingdom. In the future, the Fire Kingdom would definitely walk the path of robbery. But now, they discovered that the coastline of the continent was completely undeveloped. If one were to venture deeper into the interior, they would still be in the highlands. The cold climate there was completely different from that of the Fire Kingdom. It would be very difficult to rob the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. I'd better contact His Highness first and ask for his next instructions. He occupied the bearded lord's castle and gestured to the mages who followed him to send a message. Just as Yevich snuck into the legendary continent and investigated the power information of the surrounding countries, List had already set off from the Heart Island and quickly entered the Blue Dragon Island. He flew in the direction of the capital, the Blue Dragon City. He flew at a high altitude without alerting the humans on the ground. When he entered the Blue Dragon City and sensed the Sapphire Dragon resting in the dragon nest in the valley, he gestured to the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Orn to lower his flying altitude. He gestured to the invisible dragon Bard to reveal himself and summoned the little fire dragon Leo, forming a three-headed dragon formation. When they flew close to the ground, they just happened to fly over the Blue Dragon City. When the grayish-white gray-mouthed Iron Dragon, the red-black Fire Dragon, and the transparent crystal-colored Invisible Dragon appeared in the sky above the city, the largest sapphire city with a population of 200,000 fell into a frenzy. Dragon. 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 What is this? It's a dragon. There are 3 dragons. Glory of the night, what am I seeing? Is this the invasion of the Dragon Knight? It's too terrifying. 3 dragons. Are these dragons here to destroy the Blue Dragon City? The civilians were terrified by the appearance of the dragons. Many of them even hugged their heads and lay on the ground, not daring to look at the dragons above their heads. Many women carried their children and hid in their homes, afraid that the evil dragons would come to loot the city. Of course, there were also bold civilians who shouted at the 3 dragons, unable to suppress their excitement. Even the residents of the Blue Dragon City might not have seen the Sapphire Dragon before, let alone 3 unfamiliar dragons. The nobles in the city immediately thought of the edict of the Sapphire Grand Duke and quickly recognized the fire dragon that had shown great power in the dragon-slaying battle near the Iron Hoof Island. It's the Fire Dragon. His Highness List has come to the Blue Sky Mountain Palace in person. Glory of the night, what am I seeing? This is the dragon of the Marquis of the Flames. The one in the middle is a fire dragon, the one over there is a wholly invisible dragon, and the one over there is a light green. Wait, isn't that a light green sapphire dragon? Is that an iron dragon? Since when did His Highness List have an iron dragon? Great Dragon Knight. A knight worshipped him crazily. The stories about List circulating in the market made every knight feel incredible and envious. Listening to such stories was more satisfying than reading the best knight novels. Why did the Marquis of the Flames come to the Blue Dragon Island? Could it be? A knight immediately thought of a conspiracy and became worried. Gosh, is His Highness List on the 3 dragons? Gosh, is he looking at me from the sky? Gosh, if I can ride the same dragon as His Highness List, I'll do anything. Many noble ladies were so excited that they blushed as they looked at the dragons in the sky. The 3 dragons simply flew past the Blue Dragon City and headed for the Blue Sky Mountain Palace at the peak of the mountains in the distance. However, the commotion left in the Blue Dragon City was still lingering. The nobles spread the news and guessed the meaning of List's arrival. The commoners prayed secretly and proudly told the stories of the Dragon Knight that they had heard. The ladies either gathered together to talk about List or hid in their boudoirs to think about love. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a lake, setting off ripples that spread outwards. The blue blood orders of chivalry stationed outside the city had quickly assembled and were waiting for the Sapphire Grand Duke's summons. As the orders of chivalry under the direct command of the Sapphire family, they were bound together for good or bad. No matter how serious the situation was, they had to devote their loyalty. However, this was destined to be a false alarm. When the Sapphire Dragon took off to receive them, List had already landed on the open space in the square in front of the Blue Sky Mountain Palace with the 3 dragons. He jumped off the back of the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon and caught a Chi who had jumped off the back of the Invisible Dragon. They walked unhurriedly towards the huge and noble palace that seemed to be the focal point of the sky and the mountains. The knight guarding the palace had already been reminded. They quickly arranged themselves into a guard of honor and came before the 3 dragons while trembling with fear, clustered around List and a Chi. Chapter 888. Your Highness List, Your Excellency Achilles Ides, welcome to the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. Sapphire Grand Duke looked at the tall and high-spirited List, his calm gaze containing a faint sense of loss that could not be concealed. The nameless pawn that could only crawl in front of him in the past. Now he had become a dragon knight on equal footing. No, to be precise, he had become a high and mighty new overlord. He already had to bow slightly when they met. In particular, when he looked at the ash-gray Iron Dragon, his heart twitched fiercely. This was clearly the Iron-Gray Iron Dragon of the Duchy of Grey Iron. In the last dragon-slaying battle, he had killed Carl Violet and snatched the light-green gemstone dragon. In this dragon-slaying battle, he had killed Lloyd Z Tong and snatched the Iron-Gray Iron Dragon. Sapphire Grand Duke could not imagine how this smiling young man in front of him, who had just turned 20, could do all this. But the Iron-Gray Iron Dragon was entrenched in the palace square, so he had to believe it. It's not 3 dragons as I said before, but 4 dragons. Such a luxurious lineup, I'm afraid they have come with ill intentions. This time the Sapphire family probably has no choice. Sapphire Grand Duke felt bitter in his heart, his body constantly feeling weak. Fortunately, Grand Duchess Sarit, who was holding his arm, secretly supported him. She did not show it. Grand Duke, I came uninvited, I hope I did not disturb you. List was not arrogant and still greeted him in a gentlemanly manner. His action was the etiquette of a knight greeting an equal, giving face to Sapphire Grand Duke. Then he looked at the ox-tailed Marquis and bowed. Father. This made the recently complacent William even more complacent, unable to conceal his smile. List, why didn't the light green gemstone dragon come, but the Iron-Gray Iron Dragon? He did not know that the Iron-Gray Iron Dragon had already been ridden by List. After all, this was the first time this dragon had been exposed. I captured Duke Piero. The Iron-Gray Iron Dragon and I are compatible, and it has become my dragon. It was as if he was responding to List. The gray-mouthed Iron Dragon let out a drawn-out roar, and glanced indifferently at the Sapphire Grand Duke's party, as well as the Sapphire Dragon that was entrenched on the hill not far away. His Highness List is indeed the most outstanding youth of this era. He is simply the embodiment of a knight's glory. Sensing the weakness of the Grand Duke, Lady Sarit extended an invitation on her behalf. Your journey has been long and dusty. Your Highness List and His Excellency Achilles, why don't you enter the palace for tea and rest? Achi didn't like this kind of social scene. She didn't say a word. She just leaned against List and let her mind wander. List readily agreed. Okay. Thus, everyone returned to the Blue Sky Mountain Raising Palace. Rather than calling the Blue Sky Mountain Palace a palace, it would be better to say that it was a combination of a large group of castles. They were spread out on a mountain in the middle of the mountains, connecting from the top to the foot of the mountain. Its grandeur was far beyond the few castles on Earth. Moreover, it had magical creations. A floating garden could be seen hovering on top of one of the castles. That was the bedroom of the Sapphire Grand Duke. Standing in the corridor of the castle, one could see the Blue Dragon City in the distance and a huge blue lake. That was the largest lake on the Blue Dragon Island, the Tranquil Lake. The pearl ornaments popular throughout the Grand Duchy were collected from the low-level World of Warcraft, pearl oysters cultivated in the lake. However, the black pearl products of Black Horse Island were now renowned throughout the country. Compared with the white pearls produced by pearl oysters, black pearls were larger, rarer, and more expensive. Liszt kept the top-grade black pearls in his hands to make the wind pearl and did not sell them to the public. There were also pink pearls and golden pearls that were not sold to the public. The breeding industry of black giant clams, pink conchs and golden lip oysters had never been able to expand, and the output was not enough to supply himself. Perhaps after a few years or a decade, the development of the sea area of Flame Island could develop these three kinds of shell farming, but there was no possibility of it growing for the time being. In the luxuriously decorated hall of the palace, Liszt and Sapphire Grand Duke sat at both ends of the huge round table, surrounded by the Marquis of Oxtail, the eldest prince, the Marquis of Quicksand City, the Marquis of Red Maple City, and of course, a Chi who was holding a magic book without looking up. Your Highness Liszt, I welcome your arrival. If you are not an official guest, can I take it as a private exchange between the Sapphire family and the Flame family? The Sapphire Grand Duke had recovered his body. The brief weakness just now was just caused by emotional fluctuations. Liszt could not deny, of course this is a private exchange. It's just about the situation of the Dragon Slayer War. I think you need to know more about it, Grand Duke, so I came over. Sapphire Grand Duke nodded and said, so what else do I need to know? Neither of them had any intention of exchanging pleasantries. Liszt pondered for a moment. The situation of the dragon-slaying war is under my control. Whether it is the Eagle Kingdom, the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, or the Blast Furnace Kingdom, no matter how many times they start a dragon-slaying war, it is ridiculous behavior for me. I need the Sapphire family to understand that the sea should be ruled by the knight sailing on the sea. Sapphire Grand Duke also muttered for a moment, I apologize for the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom. Next time, there will never be a mainland dragon knight passing through the Sapphire Archipelago unscrupulously. That is a must. Liszt's attitude was clear. Whether it is the Tulip family or the Flame family, they were once followers of the Sapphire family. Now the situation has changed, but I hope that the two families can still have close cooperation, and not be obstructed by outsiders. So, how should we clarify the position of the Sapphire family? Sapphire Grand Duke asked seriously. Liszt asked in reply, Grand Duke, how do you think we should clarify? The hall fell into a short period of silence. In the end, it was Sapphire Grand Duke who broke the silence with a slightly bitter laugh. Invisible Dragon, Fire Dragon, Grey Iron Dragon, Light Green Sapphire Dragon, Your Highness Liszt, Your Excellency Achilles. Facing the current situation, I am afraid I do not have much room for choice. This is not my intention. Liszt spread his hands, indicating that he did not want to do anything to oppress others. But a stable order of the sea is the prerequisite for the establishment and development of the Flame Kingdom. I'm not afraid of the Dragon Slayer War. In fact, if I can get a dragon in every Dragon Slayer War, I am looking forward to it. It was a very cold joke. He continued, but if I can develop steadily, I am more willing to patiently build my home. The Flame Islands are far away from the mainland and have a large area. It is worth many years of cultivation, rather than relying on war to seize resources. I like peace very much. After saying that, he laughed. Chapter 889. Although the joyous atmosphere was slightly stiff, it did not hinder the improvement of the previous stiff situation. Then, after Oxtail Marquis told a few jokes, the atmosphere became more cordial and friendly. Finally, after several mediation, a new alliance agreement was signed. This agreement stipulated that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire must fully fund the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. Once the Fire Kingdom was established, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire would officially declare itself a vassal state of the Fire Kingdom and pay tribute to the Fire Kingdom. At the same time, the Fire Kingdom and Liszt's Flame family must ensure the safety of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The Azure Wave Sea would be divided to the Sapphire family, and the power of the Fire Kingdom would not extend here after the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. However, Black Horse Island and Coral Island could be regarded as the concessions of the Fire Kingdom in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, and the territory would always belong to Liszt. After signing the agreement, the Grand Duke was somewhat depressed. It was not because he followed Liszt, but because the concession of Coral Island and Black Horse Island in the agreement was a slightly humiliating performance of ceding territory for peace. Liszt had to rent these two islands. In the study, he talked to Sapphire Grand Duke alone. Grand Duke Andrew, I did not deliberately humiliate the Sapphire family about the concessions of Coral Island and Black Horse Island. In fact, these two islands are of great use to me, so I might as well disclose some information to you in advance. Your Highness, please speak. Now that the agreement had been signed, Sapphire Grand Duke no longer entangled with the title. In private he directly called List Your Highness, which was the title of a follower. Otherwise, Your Highness should be preceded by the name List, or the title Flame Marquis, or the title Dragon Knight. After the establishment of the Fire Kingdom, Your Highness would be changed to Your Majesty. The Fire Archipelago is nearly 7,000 kilometers away from the Sapphire Archipelago. How do you think I can travel quickly between the two archipelago and migrate a large number of knight and serfs to develop it? Does this have anything to do with the invisible dragon? Sapphire Grand Duke was uncertain. Yes and no. List did not beat around the bush. The ancient legendary magic transmission array really exists. I have discovered an ancient magic transmission array that connects to the Flame Archipelago, and I have studied it thoroughly with a chi. We can build a new magic transmission array. The Sapphire Grand Duke exclaimed, Teleportation Magic Array. That's right. I didn't expect the ancient legends to be true. There really is such a great magic as the teleportation magic array. Speaking of which, I'm afraid only Sir Achilles can study the teleportation magic array. No wonder you want to build a teleportation magic array on Coral Island and Black Horse Island? I intend to establish a magic teleportation array on Black Horse Island to connect the Flame Islands and the Sapphire Islands. Once the magic teleportation array is successfully established, I can shelter the Sapphire Islands at any time. You will no longer have to worry about the revenge of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the covetous eyes of the Eagle Kingdom. Now that I know the nature of the matter, I am completely relieved. The Sapphire Grand Duke poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to List. Your Royal Highness, I will do my best to help establish the Flame Kingdom according to the agreement. I hope the friendship between the Sapphire family and the Flame family will last forever. List smiled. For friendship, cheers. At this point, all the purposes of riding the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon to Blue Dragon Island had been successfully achieved. For the next day, accompanied by the Grand Duke and his wife, List strolled around the Blue Sky Mountain Palace and thought about the palace he would build in the future, how to build it and lay out it. It would definitely be several times larger, more gorgeous, and more magical than the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. The most special thing about the Blue Sky Mountain Palace was the Sky Garden, which was a building made of magic. He had a chi, a magic shooter, and the increasingly large guild of magic as his backing. He could toss out even more incredible buildings, so much so that he even wanted to build a floating castle. The castle on the ground was no longer worthy of his current identity, status, and strength. The luncheon was grand and sumptuous. All the nobles above the count who were stationed on Blue Dragon Island were invited to accompany them. The main character of the banquet was not List. Both he and Achi liked peace and quiet. The real main character was the Marquis of Oxtail, who chatted cheerfully with the Sapphire Grand Duke and toasted with the Marquis, Earl, and Lord. After 3 rounds of wine, he was full of himself and felt that the pinnacle of life was nothing more than this. Of course he understood that this was List deliberately putting on airs. That was why the nobles mainly attacked him. After all, List was too aloof. A light sip was considered a response to a Earl and Lord's toast. This Dragon Knight, who was not keen on socializing at banquets, was a little distracted and thinking about the smoke mission. The moment the agreement was reached was the moment the character was completed. Mission completed. Reward, Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Then a new smoke mission appeared. Mission. Due to the delay of the dragon-slaying war, the construction of the teleportation circle in the Heart Island Reed Marsh has not started. Now that the war has subsided, why not take the opportunity to build the teleportation circle and provide great assistance in developing the Flame Islands? Reward, Dragon Pit Mine. Building the teleportation circle was an imperative mission. What he cared about was the reward of the Dragon Pit Mine. The Dragon Pit Mine meant that this was a huge mine, and the output might be beyond imagination. The Dragon Pit meant that this was a huge pit related to dragons. It might be a pit formed after a dragon died. The reward of the Dragon Pit Mine was definitely a super valuable reward, but the type of mine was not clear. He did not know if it was because he was too used to chain missions, but he always felt that some of the rewards of the smoke mission and the content of the mission were related. The man-eating tree dragon elf has not been found. Emily is leading the giant elephant orders of chivalry to dig 3 feet into the ground to find it. Could they have dug the Dragon Pit Mine by chance? The birth of the dragon elf is inseparable from dragons. There should be no living dragons on the Flame Island. Maybe the man-eating tree dragon elf evolved by relying on the corpse of a dead dragon? There was no record that the great elf could evolve into a dragon elf by picking up corpses. but the man-eating tree dragon elf was a confirmed existence in the smoke mission. Its evolution showed that it must have come into contact with dragons. I'm really looking forward to it. If it's the corpse of a dead dragon, it's fine. At most it will add a mine. But if it's a living dragon, won't it increase my combat power? I still have 2 enchanting dragon soul fruits. As long as it's not a dragon like the invisible dragon that can see through the fruit and has a strange spiritual battle, it can basically be subdued. He now wanted to use the enchanting dragon soul fruit to subdue any dragon he saw. Ever since he dug out the emerald dragon's hind legs, he had a hunch that there would be no shortage of enchanting dragon soul fruits. With a little research, he might be able to plant a soul fruit tree. Since there was no shortage of fruits, of course he would use it casually. He would use one whenever he saw a dragon. At this time, it was time for the main course of the banquet. Sapphire Grand Duke picked up his wine glass, stood up and said loudly, "Today is a day of great significance. His Highness List has shocked the Eagle Kingdom in the battle of dragon slaying and will certainly create a new era of the sea. Let us wish His Highness List glory and invincibility." His Highness List glory and invincibility. The nobles of the Blue Blood Alliance raised their glasses and stood up, echoing Sapphire Grand Duke's wishes. Chapter 890. List had already left the Blue Sky Mountain Palace with Lee William, the Marquis of Oxtail. He and List were both riding on the Grey Iron Dragon Orn. Of course, List was sitting on the Dragon Tooth platform while Lee William was standing on a piece of scale. Looking at the mountains and the earth while riding on a dragon is a totally different experience from looking at the mountains and the earth while riding on the back of a black dragon. The Marquis of Oxtail was very excited. He was destined not to be a dragon knight and could only ride on his own black albatross, so he especially cherished this rare dragon experience. The Grey Iron Dragon was 60 meters long and had a wingspan of 60 meters. It was considered a relatively large dragon among all the dragons, so the experience of riding on it was indeed extraordinary. "Father, after you go back, search according to the list of materials drawn up by Achi as soon as possible. These materials are crucial to the establishment of the magic transmission array." "Don't worry, I will arrange it immediately." Lee William asked again, "Then when can the magic transmission array be completed?" "If it can be completed within half a year, I will not send a fleet to replenish the expedition team. The voyage is too dangerous. As long as the materials are complete, the effect can be seen in 1 or 2 months. "That's good. By the way, Father, reorganize the orders of chivalry. I intend to ask Grand Duke Andrew to issue an expansion order as scheduled this year, and take advantage of the fact that the Eagle Kingdom is preoccupied with its own affairs to rectify the Order of the Sea," List said. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his heart was filled with murderous intent. It was impolite not to reciprocate. Even though the 2 dragon-slaying battles had ended with him winning and snatching the dragon, the spoils of war couldn't be more bountiful. But since the Eagle Kingdom dared to start the war of dragon slaying, they would have to bear his revenge. This time, if he did not cut off a few pieces of his flesh, he would not be able to swallow this anger. The vassal states of the Eagle Kingdom have suffered serious losses, but the strength of the Eagle Kingdom itself has not been shaken. You must be careful. Now that the situation is good, it is best not to take risks. Father, please rest assured. I know what I am doing. With the smoke mission in hand, there was no way for List to hide his crafty plots. In a head-on battle, he was not afraid of the ordinary dragon knight of the Eagle Kingdom. Even the strongest White Iron Dragon Knight, Alex White Iron, was only SOSO. What did the other dragon knight have to fear? Even if they surrounded him, he could still escape. It's good that you know your limits. I'm just reminding you. Lee Williams sighed with emotion. His second son's vision was so broad that it was no longer something a mere marquis from a remote duchy like him could see. After giving him a brief reminder, he didn't bring it up again. Just after List left, the liveliness of the Blue Sky Mountain Raising Palace quickly dissipated. The Blue Blood nobles returned to their respective fiefdoms, while the Sapphire Grand Duke and Lady Sarit hid in the little sky garden. The past 2 days of receiving guests had consumed a lot of energy, especially when it came to controlling their emotions and changing their minds. It had almost drained the husband and wife. Lady Sarit was all right. She was only a little tired but not haggard. The Sapphire Grand Duke, on the other hand, seemed to have aged a year in an instant. Wrinkles covered his entire face. He was only in his 50s, but he looked like he was on the verge of death. Sigh. A sigh made Lady Sarit, who was brewing tea, turn around. "My dear, what else is bothering you?" There's nothing bothering me. It's just that the weight on my heart is far beyond what I can accept. Too many things have happened in the past 2 years. Andy betrayed me, someone from the upper echelons of Steel Ridge betrayed me, the Eagle Kingdom sees me as a thorn in their heart, and now List has become the Lord of the Sea. The green tea was brewed. Lady Sarit brought it to the Sapphire Grand Duke and said with a pained expression, "All of these things can't compare to the damage Andy has done to you. If not for his betrayal, which damaged the Sapphire Dragon's soul and shortened its lifespan, you wouldn't have been allowed to use your own soul to replenish the Sapphire Dragon." Is this the new green tea List sent? The Sapphire Grand Duke looked down at the cup and changed the topic. Yes, it's the green tea he took out from his space ring. He said that he picked it on the same day, fried it on the same day, and then stored it directly. I really want a space ring. All the gems in the world can't compare to the few space gems he wears. I'm afraid he's reluctant to sell the space gems produced by the invisible dragon, but he left the light emeralds to me as a consolation. Actually, I have a good impression of List. He doesn't have the arrogance of young people. Although he brought the dragon to force us to make a choice, he still took care of the Sapphire family's face. Lady Sarit nagged a little. It's a pity I don't have a younger daughter, otherwise? Otherwise what? Do you want to compete with the high mage around him? There's always a chance. Maybe. The Sapphire Grand Duke blew on the tea leaves. If he didn't have that high mage around him, I reckon that the Steel Ridge royal family would have already chosen a suitable princess and proposed a marriage alliance to him. The Eagle Kingdom might not necessarily adopt the radical method of a dragon-slaying war. Throughout history, aristocratic wars were fought while marriage alliances were formed. To be able to subdue a dragon knight through marriage, especially a first-generation dragon knight, was simply a cost-effective deal. Lady Sarit's eyes suddenly lit up as she thought of something. "My dear, I heard that List's sister is not married yet. When the Sapphire Grand Duke heard this, he immediately pulled a long face. "Don't think about these useless things." Then, without drinking the tea, he got up and left. He had already lost his dignity in front of List. If he let his son curry favor with List through marriage, wouldn't he lose even his dignity? He didn't care how Lady Sarit shouted behind him. He jumped straight down from the small hanging garden and walked toward the dark interior of the castle. After several twists and turns, he came to a dark, secret, forbidden room. "Your Highness." The forbidden room was guarded not only by knights, but also by wizards. "Open the door." "Yes." Click, click. The door made of unknown metal made an ear-piercing friction sound. The Sapphire Grand Duke walked straight in and then motioned for the knight to close the metal door. The light from several crystal lamps illuminated the room. Under his feet was a huge magic array that emitted a faint magic light. In the center of the magic array was a large metal cage. In the cage, a tall man's back was bent over the table and writing something. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the man did not stop writing. It was not until the Sapphire Grand Duke walked to the edge of the cage that he turned his back to the Sapphire Grand Duke and said in a hoarse voice, "Andrew, you haven't come to see me for a long time. Did something sad happen that made you think of me?" Grand Duke Andrew dragged a stool over, sat beside the cage and said coldly, "Tell me something that may make you unhappy." "Tell me." The Eagle Kingdom launched another dragon-slaying war. Unfortunately, this time, not only did they lose a dragon knight, but they also lost another dragon. "Is that so? The dragon fell into your hands?" "No." "Then why should I be unhappy?" "Because the strength of the Eagle Kingdom is declining, and it will collapse sooner or later. At that time, your children will lose their protection, and I will personally catch them and let your family enter the land of exile." "You don't have to scare me. How can the Eagle Kingdom collapse so easily? My children will live a safe life. Maybe in a few years my grandson Andrew will become the new Dragon Knight. At that time he will help me get what I want." The tall figure turned around. On the loose clothes there was a skull-like face. His eyes were emitting a faint blue flame. It was not an image that a human should have. This was the former Marquis Bull Andy Sapphire, but now he had become a lich. "Ah. Finally I heard a decent joke during this time." The Sapphire Grand Duke sneered. "Andrew will help you get what you want. Haha, you really dare to imagine. Let me tell you directly. Because of your betrayal, I am now following the new king and lord. He is a holy dragon knight." "Holy dragon knight?" The blue flame in Lich Andy's eyes flickered. Chapter 891. Increase the intensity of your research. I want you to solve the secret of the existence of the liches as soon as possible. Otherwise, your goat congregation can completely leave this world and go to the banished land to be the companions of evil spirits." When they left the metal door, Sapphire Grand Duke said coldly to the magician standing at the door. The magician of Goat Assembly lowered his head and replied in a flattering tone, "Don't worry, Your Highness. Goat Assembly has been immersed in souls for a long time. We will definitely master the secrets of the liches as soon as possible and make up for our mistakes." Back then, it was the great wizards of the Goat congregation who joined hands with Marquis Bull to launch the assassination of the Sapphire Dragon. In the end, Marquis Bull was captured, but the great wizards went missing. Back then, Mary Dawn and the other vampires were ordered to come to Iron Hoof Island to find the great magician of the Goat congregation. However, these great magicians had long since been captured by the Sapphire Grand Duke. He began to reverse engineer the lich. "Remember, I won't give you too much time. 1 year. If you can't give me a satisfactory answer within a year, you can prepare your own decent clothes and prepare to go to the banished land for research." The Magus Archmage shuddered. Most sorcerers supported a theory that at the boundary between magic, matter, and spirit, there was a place where time and space could not be described, where eternity and transience interacted with each other, and where only souls could walk. This place was the land of exile. Those who had committed the most heinous crimes would be subjected to a certain ritual performed by the nobles, causing their souls to sink into the land of exile. Back then, Annette Sapphire, who had designs on the Sapphire Dragon, was punished by the Sapphire family, and his soul was sent to the land of exile to sink. After that, in order to save his lover, Curtis Truth did not hesitate to become a lich, built a ghost ship, and tried to break the gate of the land of exile. In the end, he encountered List. When he left the underground and walked to the balcony of the castle, the Sapphire Grand Duke suddenly sighed and muttered to himself, "I hope the land of exile really exists and find the missing soul of the Sapphire Dragon as soon as possible. Otherwise, once I die, the Sapphire Dragon will be seriously injured and fall into a coma again. The Sapphire family can't fill the life of the Sapphire Dragon with its own soul every generation." Rumble. The sound of the metal dragon flapping its wings was like a large plane flying over their heads, producing a thunderous roar. This was caused by the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon. Under the horrified gazes of the knight and civilians around Tulip Castle, the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon landed directly in the square in front of the castle gate. Oxtail Marquis jumped off the dragon's back, turned around and calmly waved his hand. Suddenly, the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon bent its hind legs, and its wings stirred up a storm as it soared into the sky. Very quickly, under List's control, it disappeared without a trace. Only the Oxtail Marquis was left standing with his hands behind his back. "Sir, what happened to that dragon just now?" Knight Captain Mickey walked over and asked cautiously. "It's nothing. It's just List's new mount," Mickey said in a trembling voice. "His Highness List has a new dragon." The exclamation immediately spread among the Knight Captain. All the tension was gone, leaving only endless admiration, envy, and a hint of ecstasy. They were the followers of the Tulip family, and List's strength was the best guarantee for their future. One dragon could defend a country, let alone 4. Madame Marie, Levis, Rolia, Lytton, and the others had already come out. They did not have the time to greet List on the dragon's back. This time List passed by without entering. "Father, what happened just now? Why did another dragon appear and you jumped off the dragon's back?" "I didn't see clearly, but there was another person on the dragon's back." "Was it List?" Levis asked urgently. "Let's talk inside." Lee William put on airs. "It's just a new dragon for List. I didn't follow the fleet and let him send me back directly. He was in a hurry to go back, so I didn't ask him to stay. The Dragon Knight has a lot of things to do, and I also have a lot of things to deal with here. Orn, you will live on this Black Horse Island first. In the future, your dragon nest will be built on Flame Island. But it's a long way away. You have to wait for me to open the magic transmission array before you go to Flame Island." Roar. Orn was very reasonable. After List told him the reason, he found a mountain to rest on Black Horse Island. The supreme magic consumed in the previous battle and serious injuries had not fully recovered, and he really needed a place to quietly recuperate. He told the servants not to forget to provide food and magic potions for Orn. List and Achi rode the invisible dragon Bard, traveled through space, and appeared directly in the reeds of Flame Island to continue preparing the magic door. Just after he left, the great P-Elf, Ike, who had been studying the art of binding in the worm room, suddenly flew out of the castle following the aura of the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon. Ike pulled the rope in her hand and flew straight to the mountain where Orn was resting. The huge body of the Iron Dragon was clearly reflected in her eyes. Please stop. It's Lord Orn in front. The master told us not to disturb him. Although the servants were afraid of the gray-mouthed iron dragon, they were not too nervous. Thorn Castle was often visited by the little fire dragon Leo. It could be said that the residents of Black Horse Island were no strangers to dragons. Go back. I know what to do. Ike's temper was not as bad as Ella's, but she was also a great elf with quite a personality. She continued to fly towards the sleeping gray-mouthed iron dragon. When it was close, Orn suddenly opened his eyes and stared fiercely at the great elf, who was about the size of a sparrow. Ike stopped. But she slowly approached, showing a smile, and tried to make the loudest voice she could, still as soft as a mosquito. Orn, can I call you Orn? Snort. The gray-mouthed iron dragon responded by blowing air through its nostrils. This was a dismissive attitude. Ike was not frightened by Orn's attitude. Not only did she fly in front of his eyes, but she also waved the rope in her hand. Orn, do you like to tie? I can help you tie it beautifully. I have a rich and in-depth study of binding. Do you want to try it? Orn turned his head and blew directly at Ike. Whoosh! Ike was like a little bee swaying in the wind. It took a while to stabilize her body, but she did not give up and flew over. Orn, my rope was blown away by you, but I still have a spare rope. She took out a red rope from nowhere. Orn was annoyed by it. He simply closed his eyes and continued to sleep, no longer paying attention to this great elf. So Ike circled around him and finally landed on a steel-like scale. She reached out and touched it, smiled and wrapped the rope around the scale. So she played like this, and Orn treated it as a fly on his body. After driving it away twice, he was not interested in driving it away again. The servants of the castle had no choice but to pass on the message to Chris Truth. Then, through the strictly guarded magic platform, the message was sent to List, who had already arrived at the Reed Marsh. Receive the message. Chapter 892. Whether it was the phoenix perching parasol tree greater sprite Ani or the pea greater sprite Ash, both had already begun to evolve dragons. Whether they would succeed or not was still unknown. There were too few cases of great sprites evolving successfully. Fortunately, failure to evolve great sprites would not result in death. I wonder if Ainfint and Ike will be able to succeed under the influence of the power of fate. Speaking of which, I have 2 great sprites evolving, but I have so many lesser sprites, yet it seems that it has been a long time since any of them evolved into a great sprite. List mused. The most recent evolution was last year when Nami evolved into a mangrove greater sprite. Sprite worms had also not evolved into lesser sprites for a long time. The most recent evolution was last year, when the rubber worm triplets evolved into 3 rubber lesser sprites with their own characteristics. Maybe I didn't care enough and didn't pour the power of fate into this area, so the sprites fell into a normal evolutionary efficiency. Judging from this, the power of fate that I can command doesn't seem to be too powerful. That's not right, I can even trick dragons, let alone some sprite worms. He could not figure out the mystery. The smoke dragon and the fate power were too vague. He did not spend too much effort thinking about it. At present, the construction of the teleportation array on the mined island Reed Marsh was his biggest concern. At the same time, he also had to take into account the search for the man-eating tree dragon sprites. Emily kept him updated on the progress of the search for the man-eating tree. She also sent him a batch of samples of man-eating trees. These slender trees were not much different from common trees, except that their trunks and branches were as slender as vines. They had the toughness of trees. Although they could not reach the quality of ironwood, they were definitely excellent wood. However, they were too thin and could not be made into large pieces. There are not many man-eating trees in the forest and they move very fast. They can drill into the ground. Emily had mentioned the special ability of the man-eating trees in her report. They could drill into the ground like snakes and move quickly, leaving behind very inconspicuous traces. Rather than physical drilling, it was more like some kind of earth magic. However, the samples of the man-eating trees did not detect the slightest magic fluctuation. Even if they were cut into pieces, they could not be found to have any active structures. The man-eating trees that could be caught grew motionless on the ground. The man-eating trees that could not be caught quickly drilled into the ground and disappeared without a trace. If you catch them, they won't move. If you can't catch them, they'll dig into the ground. They're not animals and they don't have magic power. List became more and more interested in the cannibal tree. This must be the work of the cannibal tree dragon elves, but is this the innate ability of the dragon elves? In the Blue Sky Mountain Raising Palace, he had seen the Sapphire family's oatmeal dragon elf and the former Bull family's juniper dragon elf. The two dragon elves were 1 meter tall, and their figures were becoming more and more like humans. However, their bodies were still crystal clear like large gems. His wisdom was no different from ordinary people. He knew how to wear clothes and was versatile. He could help his master manage the elves and also help take care of the sapphire dragon. They did not know magic, but with their natural instincts, they still had some magical means such as sowing seeds, accelerating the ripening of crops, improving the quality of the species, and so on. But no matter what, they had no way of making their crops fly into the sky or burrow into the ground. Maybe this tree dragon elf is cheating? Liz suddenly thought of the 3 rubber elves. The rubber triplets can release the power of 3 phases and instantly repair the rubber tree. Could the tree dragon elf have a similar method to make the tree dragon elf drill into the ground and run? If that was the case, this man-eating tree dragon would be a little difficult to catch. Usually, the reason for catching the elves was that the worm stalk could not move, and the elves did not dare to leave the worm stalk. Now the tree dragon elf could make the worm stalk move and run away when it saw humans from afar. The most important thing was that the tree dragon elf had a grudge against humans. It was called the cannibal tree. In the beginning, the moon killer tree had eaten many of them, so they gave this tree such a name. However, Liszt had carefully studied the cannibal tree sample and did not think that this tree had the function of cannibalism. All man-eating, scavenging, insect-eating plants and so on must have an organ for digesting corpses. The cannibal tree obviously did not have this organ, unless it buried the corpses under its roots and slowly absorbed them. Compared to killing people and burying corpses, I am more willing to believe that the so-called cannibalism of the cannibal tree is the revenge of the moon killer tree. Liszt speculated. Since ancient times, the moon killer tree elves had used the magic powder made by the elves to learn magic. Maybe the elves of the tree dragon elf's compatriots were killed. So the tree dragon elf began its revenge, directly retaliating against the river tribe from a large tribe to a small tribe. If this is really the case, maybe I have to do it myself and get the mission reward that originally belongs to me. His heart was moved. Since he had decided, he did not hesitate anymore. He threw the work of building the magic gate to a chi, rode the invisible dragon bard, and personally participated in the process of hunting the tree dragon elf. He escaped into the material boundary and closely followed giant elephant Orders of Chivalry, who was digging 3 feet into the ground to find the cannibal tree elf. He wanted to determine whether the cannibal tree elf had mana retroaction light when they dug into the ground, and then used the light to locate the tree dragon elf. Little sweetheart, don't be naughty, come quickly. When the gray-mouthed iron dragon appeared on the blue dragon island, the news was like a pair of wings, crossing the sea from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire to the 3 kingdoms and many duchies on the legendary continent. In the palace hall of the Eagle Kingdom, the Eagle King smashed the crystal wine glass on the pillar, breaking it into pieces. Who can tell me, why did the gray-mouthed iron dragon fall into the hands of Liszt? Why did Duke Piero become a captive? None of the ministers in the palace dared to respond, and the person involved, Alonso Cyclamen, had already rushed to the border to guard, and Alex White Iron was escorting the corpse of Lure Purple Copper to the Grand Duchy of Purple Copper. None of them were there. So, the Eagle King's question was destined to have no answer. He did not even know how Piero and the gray-mouthed iron dragon were captured, and how Liszt quickly rode the gray-mouthed iron dragon. He was not a dragon knight, but he grew up with dragons and knew how difficult it was to ride a dragon. However, among the sapphire flies that were like maggots in the bones, there was a freak that could ride a 4-headed dragon consecutively. A while ago he was still discussing with the Dragon Knight how to control Liszt, but in the blink of an eye, the 3-headed dragon became a 4-headed dragon. There was no way to control Liszt. Who can tell me? The Eagle King did not roar, but his tone was similar to a roar. He was obviously extremely angry and his beard was trembling. The noble lords who came to serve as ministers did not say a word, letting the Eagle King breathe heavily. For a moment, the hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Taking a deep breath, the Eagle King looked at the useless ministers below him, and it took him a long time to control his emotions. He also knew that asking these ministers who did not participate in the dragon-slaying battle would not yield any results, so he could only quickly send letters to Alonso and Alex. However, before he could dismiss the ministers, a knight on duty outside the palace reported loudly, "Your Majesty, there is an urgent letter from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire." Sapphire? An urgent letter? The Eagle King's face became gloomy again. What, Andrew, the King of Flies of the Sea, also wants to give me a hard time? Knight, come in and read this urgent letter out loud. I want to hear what Andrew has to say. Chapter 893. How dare you? The King of Eagle interrupted the knight before he could finish reading the letter. The content of the letter was very simple. Liszt had sent a ransom negotiation letter through the official channels of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, asking the King of Eagle to forward it to the Grey Iron family and ask them to send someone to negotiate and pay the ransom. There was no diplomatic channel between the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the Grey Iron Duchy. Moreover, the Grey Iron Duchy was located in a remote area, so it was impossible to send a negotiation letter directly. So Liszt decided to ask the King of Eagle to forward the letter on his behalf. It was also a small humiliation. Liszt would not easily let go of the fact that the Grey Iron Duchy had dared to launch a dragon-slaying war. It would not be too late to punish the King of Eagle first. Your Majesty, this letter? A noble minister reminded the King of Eagle. The King of Eagle widened his eyes and gritted his teeth. Finally he said coldly, "Seal the letter and send it to the Grey Iron Duchy immediately. Everyone, you are the ministers of the kingdom. The Grey Iron Duchy has lost its Grey Iron Dragon because of the dragon-slaying war. How should we solve this problem?" After a while, a minister replied, "Your Majesty, the loss of the Grey Iron Dragon is a huge loss to the Grey Iron Duchy, but Duke Piero has to be redeemed. The kingdom should preside over the ransom transaction and even make up for the Grey Iron family's loss." The minister seemed to be saying that the ransom should be paid by the Kingdom of Eagle. However, the minister changed the topic. The kingdom should help the Grey Iron family get the Grey Iron Dragon back, but Duke Piero was ambushed after the dragon-slaying war. The Grey Iron family still has to raise the ransom themselves. Duke Piero was captured, so the ransom must be paid. But have you ever thought about what the Grey Iron family will do if the Grey Iron Duchy loses its dragon? Another minister shook his head. "I think the Grey Iron family may take an extreme stance." "What extreme stance?" the King of Eagle asked knowingly. "As far as I know, Duke Piero's son is already 30 years old. He is in the prime of his life and is suitable to inherit the Grey Iron family. Maybe he is not willing to redeem his father. Even if he is willing, the Grey Iron family cannot afford the huge ransom of a duke. Usually, a viscount needed a little elf, a count needed 2 or 3 little elves, a marquis needed a big elf, and a duke needed 3 or 5 big elves. However, Duke Piero Grey Iron was different. He was the duke of a dragon-rearing family. Not only that, he was a Grey Iron dragon who raised metal dragons to produce iron. The family's wealth was much higher than that of a duke without a country, and their status was equivalent to that of a Grand Duke. At the very least, they had to pay the dragon elves as ransom. In his letter, Liszt had also hinted that the dragon sprites must be the keynote of the negotiations. He believed that the Grey Iron Duchy was wealthier than the Sapphire Grand Duchy, and that there would be more than 1 or 2 dragon sprites. If one was used as a ransom, it wouldn't hurt the family. On the contrary, it would lighten the burden for the family. Without a dragon, the family should not occupy so many resources. Otherwise, it would cause trouble sooner or later. Are you saying that the Grey Iron family may not pay the ransom and push the ransom of Duke Piero to the kingdom? The King of Eagle frowned. "Yes, Your Majesty. Duke Piero is not a dragon knight. Now that the Grey Iron Dragon has been lost, the Grey Iron family will also hold Duke Piero accountable. This is an irreparable mistake." The minister replied. "Nobles would not get up early if there was no profit. Compared with the profit, family love was nothing. Moreover, Duke Piero lost the dragon and the future of his family. His son would probably hope that Duke Piero would die soon." Another minister said, "Your Majesty, if the Grey Iron family is not willing to pay the ransom, will Duke Piero just give up?" No, Your Majesty. I think Duke Piero must be redeemed no matter what. The War of Dragons started because of the kingdom. If we give up Duke Piero, all the vassal states will feel disappointed. The Kingdom of Eagle has developed for hundreds of years. We can't abandon the heart of a knight. Yes, Duke Piero must be redeemed no matter what. If the Grey Iron family is not willing to redeem the dragon, the kingdom should redeem it. This way Duke Piero will be more loyal to the kingdom." The ministers began to discuss. Some advocated that the kingdom should not take the blame. This was a private matter of the Grey Iron Duchy. Some advocated that the kingdom should step in, otherwise their followers would be disappointed. Of course, more ministers thought that they should send the letter to the Grey Iron Duchy first and see their reaction before making a decision. The King of Eagle's temples were throbbing. He was very upset. He was familiar with Duke Piero's son. He was a standard aristocrat who always put his interests first. Refusing to pay the ransom and pushing the blame to the Eagle Kingdom, Duke Piero could absolutely do it, and he would definitely do it. In this way, the ransom had to be paid by the kingdom. Otherwise, the royal family would lose the loyalty of more followers. Although some ministers encouraged him to put the blame on the Grey Iron Duchy if he really did so, these ministers would be the first to betray the kingdom. After a while, he coughed lightly to stop the noisy quarrels in the hall. First, send the letter to find out the Grey Iron family's attitude. If Peter really doesn't care about Piero's life, then the kingdom will negotiate and redeem Piero. The royal family will not abandon any loyal follower. Your Majesty is merciful. Your Majesty will not abandon us. We are willing to fight for the royal family. With the knight's glory, Duke Piero will be the most loyal shield of your Majesty. We are willing to be the spear in your Majesty's hand. Seeing this, the ministers began to flatter and express their loyalty to the King of Eagle. Therefore, this official letter written by Liszt was immediately carried by the Eagle Knight to the direction of the Grey Iron Duchy. At the same time, the news that the Grey Iron Dragon was ridden by Liszt was also passed by the Eagle Knight to the border and handed over to the Dragon Knight who guarded the border. The internal affairs of the kingdom were generally managed by the king and ministers. However, when it came to diplomacy and dragon information, the Dragon Knight needed to discuss and execute it. When the meeting ended and the ministers left, the King of Eagle was still sitting on the magnificent throne. He did not get up for a long time. He just stared at the stone pillar in the hall with the Eagle royal family's emblem. His heart was filled with sadness, anger, loss, hatred, and other emotions. Alonso, you have disappointed me again and again, Fire Kingdom. If we don't suppress the rise of Liszt, the ruling structure of Eagle, Steel Ridge and Furnace Castle in the northeast corner of the legendary continent will change dramatically. Perhaps Osborne and Helder will respond to my plan. The appearance of the Holy Dragon will arouse their desire. Osborne Platinum, King of Steel Ridge Kingdom. Helder Golden, King of Blast Furnace Kingdom. Chapter 894. I'm so angry we still let the cannibal trees slip away. Emily fiercely waved the red blood sword, her face full of unwillingness. She had been tracking the cannibal trees for a long time, and even the construction of Xinghe Avenue had been delayed. In the end, she still failed to complete the task. Just a moment ago, she clearly found a group of cannibal trees, but because of the horse's footsteps, the cannibal trees drilled into the ground and escaped, leaving not a single tree behind. Sir Viscount, what should we do? A knight captain who was helping Emily search for the cannibal trees asked. Emily took a deep breath, calming her slightly anxious mood. Continue tracking. This is an urgent task assigned by His Highness. We must catch these cannibal trees no matter what. But next time we must be more gentle. Inform all the horses' hooves to be wrapped in linen. Yes, Sir Viscount. The knight captain went to arrange, while Emily squatted at the place where the cannibal trees disappeared, her eyes bright and twinkling, seemingly thinking about something. This 14-year-old girl was mentally close to adulthood. Among the serfs, many 14-year-old girls were already married, but as a viscount, Emily did not need to worry about these troubles. Her heart already belonged to someone, and she would dedicate everything to the Sir Lord. In her eyes, there was no one but His Highness the Dragon Knight soaring in the sky. Escaping underground, His Highness said that the cannibal trees were controlled by the Dragon Elf. Now it seems that the ability of the Dragon Elf is related to drilling, so can it also drill into water? She recalled the previous tracking, and found that the direction in which the cannibal trees escaped deliberately avoided the river. It seemed that the river hindered the movement of the cannibal trees, and interestingly, the river tribe originally lived in a valley near a river. After being killed by the cannibal trees, they migrated to another valley on the other side of the river, and the cannibal trees never appeared again. Then we should send orders of chivalry to surround and drive the cannibal trees away, preferably to drive them to a closed area, where a river can be dug around the periphery. Let the shovel-toothed giant elephants dig the soil. It should be very fast. The two big teeth in their jaws are much more powerful than shovels. She made up her mind. Emily immediately carried out this plan. Meanwhile, Liszt, who had escaped into the material boundary, was carefully studying Emily. This young lady follower of his had amazed him greatly. His talent was amazing, and he became a Sky Knight at the age of 14. Although it was due to his crazy amount of resources, without talent, he wouldn't be able to advance even if he soaked in magic potions. Looking at it now, not only was Emily talented in cultivation, but she was also very intelligent. She commanded the orders of chivalry in an orderly manner, and her thoughts were clear. The plan to capture the man-eating tree group, even if he was the one who organized it, was only SOSO. Let's go, Bard. It looks like I don't have to worry about this place anymore. Besides, there's no way to worry about it. The mana retroaction will disappear in a flash. After burrowing into the ground, you and I won't be able to find the movement of the man-eating trees even if we're blind. The crystal white orbit's vision effect was very powerful, and it could see even the smallest details of magic. However, when the magic power was covered by the soil, the crystal white trajectory became blind. After all, this was not X-ray vision. Wuxia! The invisible dragon Bard cried out. He flapped his wings, found the natural node of the reeds, and directly passed through it. On this side, Achi had already arranged all the materials needed for the magic door. She only needed Bard's cooperation to expand the natural node and form a magic door that led to the world beyond the material world. Kenli Truth and the other mages of the Guild of Magic had long been standing around excitedly, waiting to witness the great moment together. Brother, everything is ready, we can start, Achi said solemnly. Although she still had the same peaceful expression as before, List clearly saw a nervous look in her eyes. Theoretical work had been prepared for a long time, and verification experiments had been carried out, but whether the magic door could be established was still unknown. How could she remain calm? It was no longer the era of the Moon Empire when the magic net was at its peak. Civilization had been lost and she couldn't stand on the shoulders of giants. She could only explore everything by herself. Fortunately, she had the help of the invisible dragon, and she had mastered the space elemental incarnation. Her understanding of space was unprecedented, and no one would be able to surpass her. Can we start? List clenched his fists in excitement. The content that he had been looking forward to was about to be shown, and he couldn't calm down. Then let's start. Bard and I are ready. Wuxia. Just like that. There was no grand ceremony, only a group of mages watching. Achi cast a spell to activate the huge magic formation set up on the reed marshes. This magic formation, which had consumed hundreds of thousands of gold coins and almost emptied the Fire Territory's revenue for a few months, was finally activated with an inconspicuous change. The light of magic flickered, and the magic drifting in the surrounding air whistled as it converged toward the magic formation. Kaboom! The rich magic elements directly created thunder and lightning, as well as the sudden appearance of flames and strong winds. Such changes didn't last long. Very soon, a vortex of air visible to the naked eye condensed above the lake surface of the reed marshes. The vortex continued to devour and grow, and finally extended to the surface of the reed marshes like a funnel. It stirred the surface of the lake, causing the lake water to expand in all directions, revealing a pitch-black hole. Brother, the crack in the material space has been torn open. Now we need you and Bard to go to the world outside of the material world to stabilize the hole. According to the plan that Achi has drawn up, inject space magic between the magic net and the crack to achieve a stable dynamic balance. Understood. List touched the neck of the invisible dragon Bard. Immediately, the human and dragon rushed toward the gradually expanding pitch-black vortex. The vortex wasn't straight, but slanted downward to the bottom of the reed marshes. However, as soon as he entered the hole, he discovered that he had already reached the world outside of the material world. At this moment, in the vision of the crystal white orbit, there was a huge hole in the material boundary. He could vaguely see the magic net's magic threads extending in an attempt to repair the vortex crack. It's time for us to act. Bard, activate your magic dragon breath shatter. Wuxia. Dragon breath. White mist sprayed around the vortex crack. The space magic was like a lubricant and repairing fluid, quickly condensing around the vortex crack. After a complicated transformation, the space magic successfully formed a buffer layer between the crack and the magic net, blocking the magic net from repairing itself. After a moment, everything was completed smoothly. The vortex crack stopped expanding, and the magic net stopped repairing itself, reaching a state of dynamic balance. Just like the entrance of the Great Maelstrom teleportation formation. Boom. List and Bard directly flew out of the hole without any obstruction. The magic formation around the reed marshes had already collapsed during the previous activation. All the magic materials lost their magic power and became complete waste. However, the magic gate formed by the vortex crack was successfully stabilized. It's a success, Achi. List laughed. We need to continue observing for a while, brother. To prevent the magic gate from collapsing, Achi needs to observe it personally. Get on the dragon. Riding on Bard, List brushed past the ground and grabbed a Chi's outstretched hand, pulling a Chi onto the dragon's back. With a turn they once again rushed into the magic gate. Kenli and the other magicians were left behind, watching the magic gate that no longer needed to be driven by the magic formation. They clicked their tongues in amazement. The environment around the reed marshes was forced to change. The lake water flooded the shore and spun along with the vortex. The fish and prawns in the lake were all thrown onto the shore. The lake, which was not very big at first, appeared extremely mysterious with the help of the vortex-shaped magic gate. Miracle, what a miracle! Kenli was fascinated. She wanted to personally experience the magic gate. However, she knew that without a wormhole, mortals who entered would be directly disintegrated into tiny particles by the special space and integrated into the world outside of the physical world. Another magician exclaimed, "Coming to the Guild of Magic is the most important and successful choice of my life on the path of truth. As expected of the embodiment of truth that walks in the secular world. His Excellency Achilles has recovered the glory of an ancient magic shooter. The place where miracles happen. Great, magnificent, incredible. I don't know how to describe it. I witnessed the secrets of truth. My teacher led me into the world of magic and here I found the home of magic. Praise His Excellency Achilles, praise His Highness List, we have completed a magic gate." Chapter 895. The Magic Gate opened. The magic gate was stable. The magic gate was successful. The day of April 21st, 155 of the Sapphire calendar, was destined to be recorded in the history of the Fire Kingdom, even if the Fire Kingdom had not yet been established. I'll leave the maintenance of the reed-sweeping magic gate to you, Kenli. If the situation changes, send a message through the magic platform. When leaving the reed-sweeping magic gate, List solemnly said. Kenli Truth responded solemnly, "Don't worry, Your Highness, we will closely monitor the reed-sweeping magic gate. If there is any movement, we will report to you and His Excellency Achilles." That's good. Next, List and Achi packed the magic materials into the space ring, rode the invisible dragon bard directly into the reed-sweeping magic gate, and quickly entered the world outside the material world. Wrapped in space magic, they were like fish in water in the world outside the material world, free and easy. They found the natural node of the Heart Island and directly crossed over. On the island, some knights and mages were directing the serfs to do basic work. He put a Chi down, took out the materials from the space ring, and let a Chi arrange a magic array here. List continued to ride Bard and travel through space. He still had a lot of work to do. He had to go to Black Horse Island, Oxtail City, and other places to collect magic materials. Many magic materials had been exhausted by the reed-sweeping magic gate and had to be collected again. After collecting all the magic materials, and after a Chi's arrangement, it was already May when the Mind Island magic gate was opened. The weather was getting hotter and hotter and everything was growing wildly. The elves of Black Horse Island were getting more and more productive, and Flame Island also ushered in good news. The potato plantation of Fire City, with the blessing of the potato sprite Kutcher, had a bumper harvest. The warehouse was full of potatoes and there was no shortage of food. The banana sprite Bobby was also a native elf of Flame Island, but the banana plantation had just begun, and it would take a year or two to harvest. More and more tribes of the Moonkill people were incorporated, and the current population had reached 400,000, but the scale of the Flame people had not expanded, and there were still more than 20,000 people. In order to prevent chaos in management, orders of chivalry had suspended the attack on the Moonkill tribe, and everything would continue after the magic transmission array was established. Now the main task was to train, reorganize, and divide the Moonkill serfs, while building cities, roads, and developing plantations. It could be said that the Flame Island and the Flame Territory were thriving. Naturally, List was always in a good mood. Even though the territory's finances were already overburdened by the search for the materials needed to build the teleportation portal, he didn't feel troubled at all. At this moment, in the garden on the rooftop balcony of Thorn Castle, he was leisurely drinking half a slope of milk, reading a novel about a knight with the title, The Time Travel of the Holy Dragon Knight Meduha Rose, written on the cover. Ever since he became famous in the Battle of the Dragon in April, a large number of novelists suddenly had a burst of inspiration, using the Holy Dragon as material to create the latest knight novel. The plot was crudely made and many of them were simply based on List as a blueprint, tinkering with bits and pieces. For example, these Holy Dragon Knight basically had a beautiful magic shooter by their side. In the knight novel in his hand, The protagonist didn't ride the invisible dragon, but instead rode the Twilight Dragon, which represented time and could travel through time at will. However, the author was still limited and only described the Twilight Dragon Knight, who could cross a few days and rescue the princess who was captured by the enemy. Why not travel through the Moon Empire, through the ancient times, through the future, through endless time and space and beat the heavens? These novelists still don't have enough imagination. They don't know how to write in infinite style. Liszt closed the night novel and threw it aside. Whoa, Ella's voice seemed to be coming from downstairs. It was unknown which lesser sprite was scolding or which greater sprite was quarreling with. After harvesting the crops, the sprites on the hot spring island began to move to Thorn Castle one after another. Ella needed to establish her power over these sprites. It had a bad temper and was like a bully. However, Liszt doted on it, and he also felt that Ella might be able to bring about a catfish effect. The stimulation of the sprites might increase the probability of evolution. If every sprite was like the corn sprite Mickey who stayed in the worm room all day counting corn kernels without making any progress, it would be difficult for them to evolve. It must be known that Ella was stimulated by the surrounding environment, and in just a few years, it evolved from a sprite worm to a greater sprite. Flutter. A black bat flapped its wings, flew into Thorn Castle, and landed on the balcony of the top floor. After a change, Merry Dawn Daybreak appeared. Your Highness. Mary bowed and quietly hid under the parasol. Vampires hated the sun, which would suppress their strength and make them very uncomfortable. Do you want milk? Liszt simply asked. Mary responded with a smile. Thank you, Your Highness. If there is red wine, I hope you can have a glass. Today's sun is a bit hot. She liked her current life very much. In the Black Knight family, vampires had a strict hierarchy, and interpersonal relationships were very oppressive, making people want to escape. But the atmosphere here was particularly peaceful. The master she followed was not only great but also not too oppressive. Especially in private, they got along very casually. The young Dragon Knight Lord did not need his followers and servants to be cautious or listen attentively. Bring a bottle of Crescent Moon wine from the cellar. Liszt said to the servant standing behind him. Yes, master. The servant hurriedly went downstairs to fetch the red wine. Liszt then asked, What is the reaction of the three kingdoms? Your Highness, the glory of your dragon-slaying war has not spread among the people of the three kingdoms. It is limited to a small number of greater aristocrats. According to the current situation, the Eagle Knight of the Eagle Kingdom is frequently dispatched, which should be due to the frequent interaction between the royal family and the neighboring vassal states and the Dragon Knight. Have you sent people to investigate the Grey Iron Duchy? No, we do not have enough blood servants. However, we have investigated the ministers of the Eagle Kingdom and obtained new information. The heir of the Grey Iron family, Pitford, refuses to pay a ransom to redeem Duke Piero. He blames the Eagle Kingdom for Duke Piero's captivity and wants the royal family to pay a ransom. So what is the Eagle Kingdom's plan? Eagle King Adonis Moonlight Silver has agreed to send a negotiating team from the royal family. Perhaps it will be a while before they arrive in Sapphire. What is the situation in the Purple Copper Grand Duchy? There is no unusual movement. It seems that after Prince Alex went there, he quickly calmed the emotions of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy. After the funeral of the Purple Copper Grand Duke, the heir successfully inherited the title. He is still called the Purple Copper Grand Duke and has not been demoted, Mary replied. The blood servants were still small, so the information they could obtain was limited. No demotion. Liszt could not deny this. Only the Dragon Knight could establish a country. The established country was a Grand Duchy, corresponding to the Dragon Knight's title of Grand Duke. When there was no Dragon Knight in the future, the title would be demoted to Duke, and the country would be demoted from a Grand Duchy to a Duchy. However, the rules were not strictly enforced. In any case, whether it was a Grand Duchy or a Duchy, they were all independent vassal states. The tribute they paid was also fixed, and they would not pay less taxes because of the demotion. Therefore, many Grand Duchies were unwilling to change the name and demote their titles after they ascended to power. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire was one of them. 3 generations of Grand Dukes after the first Dragon Knight had not been able to ride a dragon, and the Sapphire Grand Duke had only recently ridden a dragon. After reporting the news of the Eagle Kingdom, Mary continued, The blood servants don't know much about the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom. The Sapphire family should have official channels to pass the information over. But the blood servants still heard good news in advance. Liszt raised his eyebrows. What news? The Steel Ridge Kingdom has sent an envoy headed by Mashu Red White Rose to officially visit the future Fire Kingdom and pay a visit to your highness. This was to acknowledge the Fire Kingdom and prepare to establish diplomatic relations, which was indeed good news. However, List's focus was on the other side. Mashu Red White Rose? Isn't Red White Rose the surname of the dragon-raising family of the Grand Duchy of Rose? Yes, your highness. Mashu Red White Rose is the direct heir of the Grand Duchy of Rose, but he is also the nephew of King Osborne and a member of the Steel Ridge Kingdom's Dragon Knight candidate program. He currently serves as the deputy head of the Golden Fleece Orders of Chivalry, has the title of Earl, and has a very good relationship with the Platinum family. Chapter 896. The Grand Duchy of Rose was a vassal state in the northernmost part of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. The dragon-raising family, the Red and White Rose family, was famous mainly because of the roses that the family planted. Like the tulip, the rose also had a potion sequence. The Red-White Rose family had been planting roses for hundreds of years. They not only had rose dragon sprites, but also a large number of rose greater sprites, lesser sprites and sprite worms. The varieties of roses they planted were also highly differentiated. Among them the most famous were the red rose and the white rose. That was why the family would rather use the red rose and the white rose as their surname instead of the dragon. There was a type of magic potion in the white rose that was extremely effective. The magic potion produced from it was sold very well by the great nobles both at home and abroad. Its price was even more expensive than gold, and it was still in short supply. In order to let their children use the best magic potion, the great nobles were willing to spend unimaginable wealth. The red rose was even more peculiar. Among them there was a species called Red Dragon Rose. The potion made from it was called Red Dragon Water. It did not increase the training of the knight significantly. However, its greatest function was to increase the magic power of dragons, which was so valuable that after the birth of the Red Dragon Rose, the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family planned to directly annex the Grand Duchy of Rose. The Grand Duchy of Rose only had one ruby dragon, which was old and not very powerful. However, the Grand Duchess of Rose at that time made a prompt decision and paid a huge price to chase after the royal princess at that time. As a result, he became the in-laws of the Platinum family. Furthermore, he promised to supply the Red Dragon water to the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family. That was how the Grand Duchy of Rose was preserved. The Red and White Rose clan was still one of the dragon-raising clans. Since then, the royal family would marry a princess every few generations, or the king would marry a daughter of the Red and White Rose family. This meant that the two families were basically inseparable. The current king of Iron and Steel Ridge, Osborne Buckingham, was married to the current Grand Duchess of Rose. She gave birth to a boy and a girl, Mashu and Marilyn. Because of the close relationship between the two families, Mashu almost grew up in the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family, and because of her good talent, she was selected as a Dragon Knight candidate, waiting to ride a dragon. It was the same for Marilyn. She studied needlework at the Audis Academy, the Royal Women's Academy established by the royal family. Steel Pearl, the #1 beauty of the Northlands. Why are you telling me this? List put on a, "Who do you think I am?" expression, and his tone turned serious. Mary, you need to understand the focus of the Blood Servants' intelligence gathering. Don't collect boring gossip. My apologies, Your Highness. Mary apologized first and then argued, but the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family appointed Count Mashu as the head of the emissary group, which itself contains self-evident political intentions. What political intentions? The Rose family and the Baijinbo family are almost the same. The Baijinbo family hopes to be on good terms with Your Highness, so they sent Countess Mashu here. This is the first layer of political intention. Countess Mashu's sister is about to enter the age of marriage. As a Steel Pearl, her marriage is destined to be an alliance. List was stunned for a moment. He was caught off guard by Mary's quick words. However, with his status and identity, his every move would carry political intentions. Even if his original intention was to live a carefree and unrestrained life, the people around him would still think hard about the meaning behind it. In particular, List was very young, but he was going to build a country in the future, and building a country required a successor. His marriage had become the focus of attention of the various forces. As for his own marriage, List was still a little confused. He knew that he must get married and have children. As a traditional China traveler, he had a deep impression of, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. If he did not leave behind descendants, he would always feel that his life was full of flaws. And this marriage partner would probably not be a chi. Sirens and humans were reproductively isolated. Forget it, let's take one step at a time. If I really succeed in contracting the fairy dragon and live forever, it probably doesn't matter if I have descendants or not. He thought a little. He said aloud, don't guess if there is any political intention. When the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom's emissary group arrives, we will naturally know their purpose. List didn't like politics that were too complicated. Yes, Your Highness. Mary followed his advice. Of course, she understood that her master seemed to be far-sighted, but in fact, his personality was still a reckless man. Steel City suburbs, Audis College's villa accommodation area. A handsome young man was explaining something with a smile. In addition to the servants in the living room, there was a girl who was calculating the bill. The girl was wearing a light pink pleated dress, and her eyebrows were somewhat similar to the handsome man. It could be seen that the two were a pair of brother and sister. Marilyn, father and mother are very optimistic about List, and Uncle Osborne also hopes to establish a friendly relationship with the Fire Kingdom. I led the emissary group this time to see how elegant the four-headed dragon knight is, and the legendary invisible dragon defeated 5 dragons and 3 knights by himself. It's incredible. Brother, you forgot that there is also a magic shooter. The magic shooter is only a support. In the battle of the Dragon Knight, even the incarnation of truth walking in the secular world will not play much role. The more the handsome man said, the more excited he became. List is only 2 years younger than me and he is only 20 years old this year. How crazy the glory that happened to him is. So father, mother, and Uncle Osborne chose my future? The girl continued to calculate, her golden wavy hair was scattered over her shoulders, and there was a trace of liveliness in her gentleness. Although this is my fate that I can't control, do you really think this thing can succeed? I think the possibility is very high. The new king ascends the throne, the Fire Kingdom needs the support of the Iron and Steel Ridge, and the Fire family also needs the mistress to bring the glory of the night. There is no princess of the right age in the 3 kingdoms, and no one in all the principalities is more noble than you. Marilyn, you are the most suitable. Marilyn raised her head, and there was not much expression on her snow-white and clean face. Have you all forgotten the magic shooter named Acaroids? Of course not. The handsome man was obviously Mashu Red White Rose. He waved the servants in the living room with a little pride and then whispered, if the secret is not known, even if father and mother appreciate List, they will not rashly propose the marriage. That would be harmful to you. Marilyn was curious and waited for the rest of the story. Mashu laid the groundwork before continuing, the magic shooter is not a human, but a remnant of the ancient race, Siren. Siren? Marilyn was surprised. She is a siren? Yes, she is a siren. Humans and sirens can't reproduce. Do you remember how the previous heir of the Duchy of Stars was abolished? It was because he loved the siren and eloped with the lower knight, which eventually angered the Duke of Stars. Not only was he demoted to a civilian, but the siren was also exiled to the land of exile. The siren was a legend for most human beings, but it was not that the royal families of the major kingdoms could not really contact the siren, but some information was limited to the great nobles. A Chi's magic cloak could cover up the characteristics of the siren on her body, but it would always inadvertently expose her identity, especially the transparent fins behind her ears, and the oracle was somewhat similar to the shape of the fins. At a glance, it could be seen that she was different from human beings. It was not too difficult to expose her identity as a siren under the observation of someone who was observant. Of course, List did not have the idea of keeping a Chi's identity secret. He had enough power to protect a Chi. Siren? Marilyn looked down at the bill in her hand as if telling a girl's fantasy, maybe List and Achilles are also like the heir of the Duchy of Stars. Dragon Knight and Magic Shooter, human and siren. Brother, when you visit List, help me send a gift to them. As she spoke, Marilyn walked back to her bedroom, opened the cabinet, took out a delicate small box and opened the lid. There was a pair of delicate earrings inside. Chapter 897. Wearing the mermaid's protection, Mashu Red White Rose quickly led the emissary delegation to the Sapphire Grand Duchy to pay a visit to her recognized brother-in-law. In his opinion, sirens could not marry humans and List was a typical noble. Although he was only the son of an earl, he could barely be regarded as a great noble. The attitude of such nobles toward love had one thing in common, that was, it should be based on interests. Except for a very few nobles, most nobles would prioritize family interests and personal interests. This was the core of the nobles under the knight system. My sister Marilyn is the most beautiful woman in the north. She is also a steel pearl. There is no woman more suitable than her to be the queen of the Fire Kingdom in the northeast corner of the entire legendary continent. I have a four-headed dragon knight as my brother-in-law, and he is also the brother-in-law of the king. How glorious my status will be. In the final analysis, he was so eager to marry his sister mainly to strengthen the Rose-White Rose family. For many generations of ancestors, the Rose-White Rose family knew the importance of cozying up to someone powerful. Without that marriage, the Rose-White Rose family would have disappeared in the long river of history. Even if List is strong, he can't ride 4 dragons at the same time. Maybe, when Marilyn becomes the queen, I will also have the opportunity to ride a dragon. The ruby dragon in our family is too old, and the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family does not agree to let me ride other dragons. Uncle Osborne, you are using the marriage of the Rose-White Rose family. Isn't it the self-protection of the Rose-White Rose family? Mashu began to imagine that once the marriage was successful, the Rose-White Rose family would be able to benefit from both kingdoms. How glorious it would be. And the premise of all this was that List was a nobleman with interests as the core. For this reason he led the emissary group this time, not only with a large number of gifts from the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family, but also with a large number of gifts from the Rose-White Rose family, red dragon water made by Red Rose, powerful potions made by White Rose, and rubies produced by the Ruby Dragon. No matter how talented a young man is, he will also bow down to the wealth of the Rose-White Rose family. List did not know that someone was prepared to use money to knock him unconscious. After hearing the report from Mary, the blood servant, he thought for a moment and threw the matter of the emissary group from the Iron and Steel Ridge to the back of his mind. It was quite interesting that a marriage alliance happened to him. Before coming to this world as an extremely ordinary person, when he failed to woo a girl, he had often wondered why the country didn't provide for the distribution of wives, so that an honest person wouldn't even be able to get a piece of the pie. But if he really had to marry a noble young lady whom he had never met before, he was afraid. The aristocratic lifestyle here was very open. List was very particular about the color of his hat. This was also one of the reasons why he liked Emily, Lucy, Hippolyta and the other little girls. Young girls were always beautiful. They had not been polluted by this turbid world yet. They were like a lotus flower that had grown out of the mud but was not tainted by it. If one cared for them carefully, they would always grow into what they hoped for. Of course, he welcomed the arrival of the envoy group, and he also gladly accepted the goodwill of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. As long as the 3 kingdoms didn't band together, it was great news. The Fire Kingdom needed time to develop, and he himself also needed time to grow. He had ridden too many dragons in a short period of time, and the training time with each dragon was too short. So far, he hadn't left a single soul mark, and he hadn't even developed much of the dragon's combat manual. The next day, when the last magic material was ready, List decisively left the comfortable Thorn Castle and rode the invisible dragon bard to the Heart Island. At this moment, there was a whirlpool-like magic door slowly turning on the Heart Island, and a pitch-black passage led directly to the inside of the island. There was no water, and this magic door was completely built on land. Brother, you're back. Achi was standing at the edge of the Heart Island, practicing mastering the Earth Elemental Incarnation. If it wasn't for the delay of the Space Elemental Incarnation, she would have practiced the Earth Elemental Incarnation as planned after mastering the Water Elemental Incarnation and Ice Elemental Incarnation. This was a practice for large-scale manufacturing projects. Ordinary archmages could only use magic to slightly change the terrain, but once a magic shooter mastered the Earth Elemental Incarnation, they could change the terrain as they pleased. Legends said that ancient magic shooters had the power to move mountains and fill seas. Perhaps the description was exaggerated, but the power of magic shooters was evident. Yes, I'm back. List walked over and stroked Achi's beautiful azure hair, while Achi meekly tilted her head, enjoying the stroking. There was already an indescribable tacit understanding and intimacy between the two. Then, brother, let's start connecting the 2 magic doors and expand the wormhole space. Achi said excitedly after enjoying the stroking. Okay. The 2 of them rode the invisible dragon bard and went straight to the magic door. After entering the world outside of the material world, Achi took out the magic materials, made the required magic array, and continuously guided Bard to activate the magic array. Then, with the help of its innate ability, she rushed back and forth between the two magic doors. This was a set of complicated magic behaviors, and it probably used the attraction between magic powers to guide the magic doors. Finally, the beacons of the two magic doors were connected, and then, through Bard's spatial magic power, it slowly expanded the magic connection, opening up the wormhole space. The principle was very complicated. List didn't know much about it, but he only needed to follow Achi's instructions. After 3 days of intermittent work, a man, a dragon, and a siren were exhausted, and the wormhole between the two magic doors was finally expanded. After carefully reinforcing it, the magic teleportation array was officially completed. The two-way repulsion of the channel is normal, and the speed of rushing out of the magic door has been attenuated, and it is now equal to the speed of entering the magic door. Brother, the Heart Island Reed magic teleportation array is announced to be completed. After repeatedly passing through the two magic doors, Achi smiled sweetly. Her heart was full of a sense of accomplishment. This was the first glory of the ancient magic shooters that she had copied. Standing in front of the Heart Island magic door, List was also excited. This great miracle that only existed in some legends was tossed around by himself, and his sense of accomplishment was no less than Achi's. He took a deep breath. He quickly made a decision. Since this magic teleportation array has been completed, and the territory does not have the financial and material resources to build the Black Horse Island Jade Mountain magic teleportation array for the time being, then this magic array will be used as a regular transportation throat to transport resources and start building the Flame Islands. After the completion of the magic teleportation array, List quickly notified the Oxtail Marquis to let the Tulip family prepare materials and participate in the construction of the Heart Island. To protect the magic teleportation array, it was best to build the Heart Island into a castle fortress. Chapter 898. The teleportation array has been completed? That fast? Oxtail Marquis exclaimed. List calmly sipped his tea. Father, don't you know how efficient I am? It's just a magic teleportation array. Achi and I can easily complete it. Father, you can arrange for the family's knight and serfs to go to Tulip Island through the Heart Reed transmission array. That's good. With the Heart Reed teleportation formation, I don't have to continue plowing in Oxtail Hill. Next, I plan to keep a part of the knight to maintain trade, and move the rest of the knight and serfs to Tulip Island. What do you think? I think it's feasible. The Iron Hoof Island will be returned to the Sapphire clan sooner or later, so there's no need to run it. Black Horse Island and Coral Island are the concessions of the Fire Kingdom in the future. There is no need for Father to continue to stay. It is more important to develop Tulip Island. If domestic development is not done, the trade focus will always be in the direction of Sapphire. If the trade focus remained on Sapphire, it would only continue to enrich the Sapphire family. This was not what List hoped for. He hoped that the bustle of the Shell Sea would rapidly surpass that of the Jade Wave Sea, and the Blaze family would rapidly surpass the Sapphire family. After all, the Sapphire family was just his follower. The big brother must be richer than the little brother. Which country is next to the Fire Islands? Oxtail Marquis suddenly asked. It's the border between the Yellowstone Plains Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom. However, the terrain is complicated and uninhabited. It's still a wasteland. A few hundred kilometers inland was the Fengshua Mountain Principality, a very weak small country. I'm asking Yevich to investigate. We'll make further plans after we gather enough information. In fact, he had an idea. He might as well occupy a large piece of land on the legendary continent and build a kingdom that spanned across the continent and the ocean. It just so happened that the border between the two countries was barren and uninhabited, and there was a large piece of land that could be occupied. As for war, he was not afraid. It just so happened that he needed an excuse to plunder the knight's resources. In his eyes, the knight was a kind of resource. Once the Fire Kingdom absorbed the Moon Killers, the serf population would no longer be lacking. However, what could they do if they didn't have a knight? Children were encouraged to have children for at least 1 or 2 generations before they could become talents, so robbing them was the most reasonable and fastest way. As for the loyalty of the knight class, it didn't matter to him if he had milk or mother. Oxtail Marquis did not know what List was thinking. He was worried and he said, "Is the coast all barren land? That will be difficult to do business with." It's fine. Let's develop the country first. I'll settle the trade issues later. All right. After the father and son chatted for a while, a servant came to report that Madame Penelope had arrived, so Liszt went to accompany the old lady. At noon he enjoyed a new play in the indoor theater built in Tulip Castle. After watching the play, after chatting for a while, they left Tulip Castle. When he returned to Black Horse Island, a large number of orders of chivalry and serfs had gathered on the island, ready to board the ship and set off for Heart Island. They crossed the Heart Reed teleportation formation and arrived at Flame Island to assist in the development of Flame Island. The workshop industry and the plantation industry would be gradually transferred over the next year. Although this was a concession, Liszt was not at ease to leave his family here. It was safer to move to Flame Island. Captain Marcus, Captain Paris, Captain Charles, I'll leave the orders of chivalry and the serfs to you. Be careful when crossing the Heart Reed teleportation formation. Once the teleportation formation changes, terminate the teleportation immediately. Please rest assured, Your Highness. Well, go ahead. After explaining, Liszt did not stay any longer. He directly drove the invisible dragon Bard into the world outside the material world, then found the exit of the Great Maelstrom teleportation formation and quickly crossed to Flame Island. He went straight to the location of the giant elephant orders of chivalry. The reward of the smoke mission seemed to have been discovered by Emily. Mission completed. Reward, Dragon Pit Mine. The new smoke mission was also released as soon as the Heart Reed teleportation formation was completed. Mission: the Eagle Kingdom's negotiation team, the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom's envoys, and the Blast Furnace Castle's envoys will arrive one after another. The order in the northeast corner of the legendary continent needs to be re-established, and the Master of the Sea also needs to show his authority. Please force the three kingdoms to recognize the Fire Kingdom. Reward: Firebird in the Skeleton. The reward of the new mission seemed to be related to the Dragon Pit Mine. It's here, Captain. The knight climbed out of the big pit and reported to Emily. Prepare to send people to surround the big pit. The giant elephant orders of chivalry immediately dig the river channel and fill the ditch with water. This time we must not let the man-eating trees escape. Emily ordered coldly. In front of her was a valley. In the distance ahead, a mountain range separated into two branches, forming a rather large valley. The valley was verdant and lush. However, hidden in the vegetation there were big pits one after another. The smallest pit had a diameter of more than 800 meters, and the largest even reached a diameter of 10 kilometers. The man-eating trees kept escaping, but they were blocked by the giant elephant orders of chivalry in this valley full of big pits. In the end, they were blocked in a big pit with a diameter of 1.5 kilometers. The giant elephant orders of chivalry dug a ditch around the big pit. Once the ditch was filled with water, the man-eating trees could be completely blocked in it, and it would be like catching a turtle in a jar. Rumble. Splash. A river in the valley quickly flowed into the ditch, and in a short while the ditch was filled with water. Looking at the overflowing river in the ditch, Emily clenched the red blood sword in her hand and suddenly said, "Orders of chivalry, follow me inside to search." The circular pit with a diameter of 1.5 kilometers had an area of about 7 square kilometers, or more than 10,000 acres, which was equivalent to the area of several small villages added together. Orders of chivalry searched in a fan shape, and soon found traces of the man-eating trees. The man-eating trees that had no time to burrow into the ground stood upright in the woods. However, although many man-eating trees were found, there was still no trace of the dragon sprite. Emily could judge that the dragon sprite was here. Not coming out? In that case, we'll take the stupid way and cut down the woods in the big pit. She made a very decisive decision. Liszt had instructed that the dragon sprite should not be hurt, so they chose to cut down the trees. Otherwise they would burn them all with a fire. The serfs following orders of chivalry were quickly dispatched and began to cut down from the edge to the center of the pit, leaving only sparse man-eating trees. The cut-down trees were transported out, and the big pit was bustling with activity. The knight shuttled back and forth, looking for any traces of the man-eating tree dragon sprite that might be exposed. Emily was also patrolling. When Liszt rushed over riding the invisible dragon Bard, he saw a busy scene. After he appeared, Emily immediately rushed over. "Your Highness, this is the valley full of big pits?" "Yes, we have blocked the man-eating trees in this big pit, but we can't find any traces of the dragon sprite. I plan to cut down the trees first, and if the dragon sprite is still not exposed, then we will start digging," Emily said seriously. Hearing her say this, Liszt suddenly had an idea. Emily's loyalty to me is unquestionable, so should I teach her the Chi's secret technique Magic Eye? Speaking of which, Although the magic eye was a rare and precious chi secret technique, it was not like there were no others in the outside world who had it. After all, Liszt had found it in the book cover, and the original owner seemed to be a Sky Knight of the Blast Furnace Kingdom, Stephanie Vulture. Let's talk about it later. He still had not made up his mind. He was going to send someone to investigate the Vulture family in the future. If the Vulture family still existed and the magic eye chi secret technique had not spread, he would plunder the Vulture family and let the Flame family own the magic eye. Chapter 899. This chapter is Ascending the Azure Court. Emily was still cutting down trees. Liszt walked around the pit and didn't find the light of mana retroaction. He didn't know how well the man-eating tree dragon spirit could hide. They had been playing hide-and-seek for more than a month and hadn't shown up once. While cutting down trees, he let a group of serfs move to another pit, and then chose the central position to start digging. He felt that these pits were the Dragon Pit Giant or rewarded by the Smoke Mission. The serfs dug hard, but they only dug 2 meters deep before they reached the rock layer. The stone was broken and sent to Liszt. The stone was heavy and dark red in color. What kind of stone is this? Do any of you know it? Liszt shook it and felt that the stone was some kind of ore. Especially with the Smoke Mission's prompt, he felt that the stone in his hand was more like an ore. Vernal Ink, who was next to Liszt, replied, "Your Royal Highness, if I'm not mistaken, this is iron ore." Iron ore? Liszt took a closer look. It was a little different from the iron ore he had looted from the Dragon Mountain iron mine. The main difference was the color. What kind of iron ore is this? Why is it different from the iron ore I have seen? I remember that the iron ore of Dragon Mountain is very black. It may be a poor mine. Iron ore with low iron content generally appears in the upper position of the ore bed. Vernal sounded excited. Your Royal Highness, there may be iron ore under this pit. If this was really iron ore, then there was no doubt that this was the Dragon Pit Giant or a super huge iron ore mine. Looking at the densely packed pits throughout the valley, Liszt's eyes turned red. Hurry up and send people to dig every pit. Dig 3 feet into the ground to find the ore underneath. I want to know how big this iron mine is. Yes, Your Royal Highness. Vernal was full of action. Iron ore was too important to the country. The knight's equipment and daily utensils were inseparable from iron ore. Not only did the serfs dig hard, but many knights also dug hard with shovels, hoes, and pickaxes. There were a few other pits around the one with iron ores. Very quickly, iron ores of different colors and qualities were dug out. There was a large pit that only dug half a meter deep and dug out a pitch-black iron ore. This was a high-quality iron ore with an iron content of 90%. It could be directly cast into utensils with a few strikes. It seems to be a really large iron mine. Not bad. Liszt was in a good mood. With such an iron mine and the gray iron dragon, the Fire Kingdom would no longer be short of iron. However, as the pit was dug further, soon different ores were sent over. Your Highness, these ores don't look like iron ore but more like copper ore. An old knight like him was involved in the daily affairs of the territory all year round. He was involved in ore refining, so he knew many kinds of ores. It's probably bronze ore. Those iron ores before are probably Blackheart iron ores. He then made a guess. It's very likely that a long time ago, a black-hearted iron dragon fought with a bronze dragon here, forming this huge mine. His guess was very logical. However, soon a knight brought a new stone. This was a stone that looked like a combination of many square stones. After seeing the stone, Vernal exclaimed, "This is galena." Galena? The ore produced by the lead dragon. There is a lead dragon in the Eagle Kingdom. I once bought a batch of galena ore to refine lead metal. Soon after, a few more pits sent over galena. In other words, in this valley, there were not only black iron ores, bronze ores, but also galena ores. According to Vernal's logic, the ancient times might have been a triangular battle between the bronze dragons, the black-hearted iron dragons, and the lead dragons. However, the excited Liszt and the others still underestimated the richness of the dragon pit. When night fell, another knight delivered a new ore. It was a scarlet red ore that was easily crushed into a sand-like shape. Vernal did not recognize it, nor did Liszt, but it was certain that it should be a new kind of metal ore. The Guild of Magic had been informed to send mages who had studied metal ores, so they would know what kind of metal ore it was. Your Highness, it's incredible. There are actually 4 kinds of metal ores buried in this valley. Vernal could not suppress his excitement. Under the light of the bonfire, his face was red as if he had been hit in the head by a gold ingot. List, on the other hand, was much calmer. He had long known of the existence of the dragon pit, but the number of types was a little unexpected. Don't be impatient, Vernal. We have already explored the distribution of the large pits in the valley, and there is a large pit on the periphery of the valley that has not yet been excavated. There may be new ores there. There are new ores? Doesn't that mean there are 5 kinds of ores? Vernal was even more excited. It was different from Vernal's excitement for the ores themselves. List, on the other hand, was thinking about another question. Assuming that the 5 dragons fought here, could some of them have died here and then been buried deep underground? The reward of the new smoke mission is the menace of the dragon in the skeleton. Does this mean that there is a dragon underground waiting to be reborn? Just like Leo, a dragon would give birth to a fire seed after its death, waiting for the opportunity to be reborn again. It was unlikely for the metal dragons and gem dragons. They did not have the possibility of elementalization, and the dragon's supreme magic could not exist for a long time. Only the elemental dragon's supreme magic could exist forever. He did not mention it to Vernal. He was just guessing, perhaps there are more than 4 or 5 metal dragons fighting here. There are also elemental dragons involved. I just don't know if there are gem dragons involved. The dragon pit mine would be developed sooner or later, and he would soon know whether there were elemental dragons sleeping here. And tonight he still had work to do. As the serfs continued to cut down trees, all the trees in the big pit above the Blackheart iron mine were cut down within a day and night, leaving only a few hundred cannibal trees scattered in the northwest corner of the big pit. Your Highness, can we start digging now? Emily asked. Then let's start. The serfs who had changed shifts and rested began to dig along the open space between the cannibal trees. According to the distribution of the Blackheart iron mine, the soil layer was less than 2 meters deep. As long as the soil here was turned over and the cannibal trees were transplanted to other places one by one, he did not believe that he could not find the cannibal tree dragon elves. The moon set and the sun rose. The darkness before dawn was pierced by the sun, and the cannibal trees were dug away one by one. When the last few dozen trees were about to be finished, the cannibal trees suddenly began to tremble. Then the branches became soft, and the whole tree bent to the ground ready to escape. Emily, who had not slept all night, saw this and shouted to the knight behind her, "Wake up, His Highness!" She then rushed to the last few dozen cannibal trees. Chapter 900. This chapter is 100,000 Years of Salted Fish. Your Royal Highness. List, who was napping in the tent, had already woken up when Emily shouted. He was not a deep sleeper. So when the knight came to call, he lifted the curtain of the tent and walked out. Instead of riding a dragon, he flew directly into the sky and turned into a meteor. He landed among the remaining cannibal trees. With the eye of magic, he could see that the cannibal trees, which had no light of magic retroaction, were all flashing with a pale yellow magic light. These cannibal trees were originally burrowing into the ground, but Emily detected them and directly used her Thunder Attribute Battle Aura to bombard the ground, interfering with their movements so they could not burrow down for a long time. However, Emily and the others did not dare to harm these cannibal trees at will, for fear of hurting the dragon elf. That was why the situation was in a stalemate. When List arrived, he saw the cannibal trees desperately trying to burrow into the ground, but to no avail. He moved a few steps and rushed to the side of a cannibal tree lying on the ground. He reached out and grabbed the soft trunk of the cannibal tree, then released the firebird and quickly deterred all the cannibal trees. The pale yellow magic receded, and these cannibal trees quickly returned to their original state of growth. I've caught you, little fellow. Stop struggling and show yourself. The corner of List's mouth curled into a smile. The inconspicuous man-eating tree in his hand was hiding a strong magical radiance. Obviously, it was the hiding place of the man-eating tree dragon. Patter. As if knowing that it could not escape, a large crystal-clear elf jumped out of the cannibal tree. It had a human form, but its body was translucent. At first glance, it was impossible to tell whether it was more like a boy or a girl. In short, it had no gender characteristics. The color of its body was pale yellow, about 1 meter tall, and its figure was slightly slender. A pair of transparent wings flapped, allowing its feet to float above the ground. Its face had delicate features and big, dark eyes. There was also a leaf on top of its head, and below the leaf were several fibrous roots. Jirabalawadesha. The man-eating tree dragon elf trembled slightly in the face of List, who was overflowing with dragon might, but it still bravely shouted at List. This was a language he had never heard of before. It was somewhat similar to the language of the moon, but not quite because there was no pattern to it. It was probably a meaningless shout. Stop shouting, I don't understand. Come, let's contract it and then we can communicate normally. List reached out his hand, gesturing for the man-eating tree dragon elf to quickly contract it and not waste time. Wah! The dragon spirits that were gradually taking on the shape of humans weren't as cute as the lesser elves and greater elves, but they were more beautiful than them. However, this slightly ferocious man-eating tree dragon elf did not seem to be easy to deal with. Even under the shroud of dragon might, it still dared to talk back. So, do you want jade powder? We have all kinds of flavors. List took out a big bag of jade powder and held it in his hand. The man-eating tree dragon elf's eyes instantly lit up, but then it glared at List. Bilop de Walahai. After the contract, these are all yours. Little fellow, don't worry. You will definitely not be harmed by following me. The moon killer cannot harm you, and neither can the flame man. Because I am the master of this place, everything on this land belongs to me. Desvidania. Your unwillingness to cooperate is putting me in a difficult position. You must know that I have even come up with a name for you. How about Twisted Dryad, Maokai? You don't like it? How about Earth-escaping beast, Rexel? You don't like it either? Do you want to be called Jade Deity Ian? From your expression you don't like it? List said 3 names in a row and then said the 4th. How about I call you Spear of Vengeance, Krista or Carly for short? I won't allow you to refuse anymore, so I'll call you Carly. Carly, my patience is running out. Looks like I have to do it myself. Seeing that the man-eating tree dragon elf Carly was not cooperating, he could only step forward and reach out to grab her. Under the powerful strength of the Dragon Knight, Carly couldn't struggle at all. Even if she wanted to release her innate magic, it was dispersed by List's surging dragon's aura. She couldn't even circulate her magic power. At the side, Emily looked at List quietly. She was very envious of the Dragon Knight's power. Although she had been promised by List that she would be able to interact with the light emerald gemstone dragon Ethan when the time was right, she was currently only a normal Sky Knight. She was still far from becoming a perfected Sky Knight. Of course, this was because she did not know what List was planning. List did not care when Emily would be perfected. He only needed to leave a spiritual brand in Ethan's mind before letting Emily ride the dragon. Given his relationship with Emily, the spiritual brand shouldn't make things too difficult for Emily. This would greatly reduce the difficulty of Emily riding the dragon. While she was slightly distracted, List had already grabbed Carly and forced his finger into Carly's mouth. After propping up Carly's chin a little, Carly's teeth bit his finger. When the blood and teeth came into contact, a strange feeling lingered between him and Carly. This was the familiar power of the contract between the elves. But compared to the contracts between sprite worms, lesser sprites and greater sprites, the power of the contract between the dragon elves seemed to be much weaker and less obvious. Yuraki Brusta. The dragon elf continued to shout. At this time, List had already understood its emotions. It was scolding List for being too rough, and angrily denouncing that humans were bad people and needed to be killed. The power of the contract can no longer distort a very murderous dragon elf's view of the world. At most, it can reduce its perception of me from hatred to unfamiliarity. Greater sprites and lesser sprites are better. After the contract, they will directly become closest to me. Taming the dragon elf is a bit troublesome. Over the next period of time, List appeased Carly. It was nothing more than the emotional exchange of the previous words, and then taking out a large bag of jade powder to tempt Carly, and finally eliminating Carly's unfamiliar attitude towards him. In addition, the power of the contract was faintly changing. Finally, when it was almost noon, Carly finally recognized List. She shouted List's name. List? Very good, Carly. Then from now on, bring your cordyceps and these man-eating trees to live in the plantation I've opened up. He had many questions about the dragon elf that he wanted to understand, but now was not the time to study it. Carly was still very vigilant. It had indeed been injured by the moon killers. According to the emotional exchange, its worm stalks had almost been cut off by the moon killers. From then on, it began to retaliate against the moon killers. It slaughtered thousands of moon killers, caught them and buried them in the roots of the man-eating trees, and then absorbed the nutrients from them. The man-eating trees, beyond List's expectation, actually had the ability to eat corpses. They could emit a smell that attracted dying animals. When the animals fell under the tree, the roots, trunk, or even leaves would grow fibrous roots and plunge into the animal's body to absorb nutrients. A very interesting plant. Once Carly's guard is down, I'll carefully study the dragon sprites and the man-eating trees. List thought to himself as he watched Carly quietly sitting in the tent eating jade powder. No matter what kind of elf it was, the greatest value was still the crops they cultivated. After eating a simple field lunch with 10 dishes, he took a short rest. In the afternoon, he began to summon the magicians who had come to identify the ores. They identified the 4 ores that had been found, and the 5th ore that was found this morning. Your Highness, according to my identification, these 5 ores are blackheart iron or bronze or galena or mercury or with the outer layer of mercury and titanium ore. Mercury or in titanium ore? List was really surprised this time. The magic metals that are not magic metals, mercury and titanium? Mercury was the only liquid metal at room temperature. It was a very valuable magic material. Many magic circles and magic equipment needed mercury. Titanium was also very valuable and was also known as small mithril, because it had similar properties as mithril, lightweight and hard material. If titanium was mixed into armor, the quality of ordinary iron armor could be directly increased by 2 to 3 levels. Mercury dragon and titanium dragon were not found in the 3 kingdoms and vassal countries. A small amount of mercury and titanium were transported from other kingdoms in the legendary continent. He didn't expect to find mercury and titanium mines on Blazing Island. Chapter 901. I want to build a city here called Dragon Valley City, then build a road from Inferno City called Longshua Avenue. Then build a road from Dragon Valley City to Estuary City called Longshua Avenue. Inferno City also wants to build a road to the Reed Marshes called Longshua Avenue, and build a city in the Reed Marshes called Reed City. List casually sketched on a map. Inferno Island was square in shape, but at an angle. The sacred mountain where the Moonslayer holy tribe was located was roughly at the center of the island. From here one could divide the island into 2 halves, northwest and southeast. Currently, the Flame Men's activities were mostly concentrated in the southeast. The geographical center of the southeast was roughly the Maelstrom Mountain, so Inferno City at the foot of the Maelstrom Mountain could become the transportation hub and central city of the southeast. Longshua Avenue extended east from Inferno City, crossing 2 tributaries of the Maelstrom River and extending to Reed City near the Reed Marshes. Reed City, which guarded the Hart-Reed Transportation Formation, would inevitably become a trading city. Further east from Reed City was the East Coast, where a suitable port could be found to build a port city. Longshua Avenue extended west from Inferno City to Jade Mountain, a branch of the Flame Mountain Range, and connected to Jade Stone City that was being built here. In the future, a road could be built from Jade Stone City to the west and north, reaching the Sacred Mountain. List intended to build a city at the center of the island. Longshua Avenue extended southwest from Inferno City to the Dragon Pit Mine, and Dragon Valley City would be the future mining center. Longshua Avenue extended south from Dragon Valley City to Estuary City at the mouth of the Maelstrom River. This city would be the only port city of Inferno Island at this stage, responsible for communication with Tulip Island. Basically, these 4 avenues were the current development vein of Inferno Island, and all agricultural and industrial production would be carried out around these 4 avenues. The Hart-Reed Transportation Formation had been activated, and a steady stream of knight and serfs were rushing to Inferno Island. When they arrived in large numbers, Inferno Island would be crazily developed. Longshua Avenue needs to be built as soon as possible. Emily, immediately lead the giant elephant orders of chivalry to build Longshua Avenue, and then Longshua Avenue. Understood, Your Highness. After assigning the tasks of repairing the roads and building the city, List habitually left the work to others. He rode on the invisible dragon bard and circled above the Dragon Pit Mine a few times. The size of this mine located in the valley was beyond imagination. It was about 20,000 square kilometers. Figuratively speaking, List's hometown, Coral Island, had an area of more than 10,000 square kilometers, equivalent to the area of an ordinary prefecture-level city. The Dragon Pit Mine was about the size of 2 Coral Islands or 2 prefecture-level cities, and it was distributed with 5 types of ores. Of course, on average, the mining area of each ore didn't seem too big. At present, it was confirmed that the Galena mine was located in the depths of the valley and had a relatively small area. The Mercury mine was located on the right side of the valley and also had a very small area. The black iron mine was located on the left side of the valley and had the largest area. The bronze mine was located in the middle of the valley and also had a sizable area. The titanium mine was located at the entrance of the valley and its size was still uncertain. The exploration mages of the Association of Mages were exploring together with the knight, striving to determine the exact distribution of the mining area and formulate a mining plan. As for the reserves of the mining area, it was very difficult to calculate. However, these ores were all shallow ores and the difficulty of mining them was relatively low. Unlike Earth, where many minerals were distributed deep underground, the metal and gem mines of this world originated from dragons, and their buried locations were very shallow. Perhaps there were also deep mines. After all, no one had the means to explore and mine them. Once this mining area is mined, it will be enough to support the Fire Kingdom's resource consumption for decades. Coupled with the jade mine of Jade Mountain, there is no need to worry about resources. Flame Island deserves the praise of having a vast territory and abundant resources. Lys was overjoyed. However, is there really an elemental dragon skeleton buried at the bottom of the dragon pit mine? This was a question worth exploring. Mining was not an easy task. It would take a very long time to completely excavate this valley. Unfortunately, even if my magic eye is combined with the dragon, I still can't see the magic underground. The magic eye was already dazzling enough, but he still felt that it wasn't good enough. Heart Island. The knight was supervising the serf's construction project. The chief architect was Mbape Gravel, the teacher of Lyst's chief architect, Jemiah Rammed Earth. Jemiah was almost executed for sleeping with Mbape's daughter-in-law, but was eventually bailed out by Lyst. Mbape had been working as an architect for the Tulip family. The Heart Island was in urgent need of development, so Lyst hired him to preside over the construction of the island castle. Perhaps he was resentful of Lyst for sheltering Jemiah. But Mbape did not dare to show any of it. He still worked conscientiously. Moreover, there was the Knight of Black Horse Island supervising, so no one dared to cut corners. The watering is not qualified. We must use enough cement here, he commanded in a loud voice. The construction craftsman immediately pushed a wheelbarrow of cement and poured it into the shallows of the Heart Island at low tide. High-quality cement made of volcanic rock had become another major infrastructure tool in Lyst's hands. After solidification, the cement was harder than rock. Woo woo woo. Suddenly a horn sounded. A fleet of ships with red tulip flags slowly approached the hastily built dock of the Heart Island. There was also a huge pitch-black bird circling above the fleet. The big bird landed directly on the construction site of Mbape and others. Then a knight wearing silver armor jumped off the bird's back. The supervising knight immediately approached and saluted, "Sir Marquis, go and do your work. I just came to take a look." It was none other than Lyst's father, the Black Albatross Knight, Marquis Lee William. "My lord." Mbape also hurried to salute. Lee William smiled, "Mbape, it's hard working on the island. It's an honor for me to serve His Royal Highness the Dragon Knight." "It's not hard at all." Mbape responded hurriedly. He was a famous master architect, but in the eyes of the nobles, there was not much difference between him and the commoners. The gap in class status was far from being made up for by superb skills. "Well, work hard." Lee William raised his hand in satisfaction. The Heart Island was not his territory, but it was his son's territory, so he had the spirit of being the owner. "Build the Heart Fortress well and protect the island and the door behind it. Don't let anything slip through your fingers. Please rest assured, my lord. The quality of Mbape's construction has always been the best." "I believe that." Seeing that Lee William was about to go to other places to inspect, Mbape hesitated for a while and suddenly said, "My lord, there is one thing I don't know if I should ask you or not." Lee William slightly frowned. "What is it?" He did not like his followers and subjects making requests of him. Mbape quickly said, "My grandson Steve Gravel is studying in the Knight College. He is only 17 years old and is already an Earth Knight. I heard that His Royal Highness the Dragon Knight is recruiting a new group of Retainer Knight. I wonder if you can recommend Steve to His Royal Highness." Mbape bowed deeply to Lee William. Lee William did not want to agree at first, but considering that Mbape had worked for the Tulip family for many years, he reluctantly agreed. "As long as the Soul Castle is built perfectly, I guarantee that your grandson can become a Retainer Knight of Lyst." Retainer Knight. Chapter 902. The fleet of the Tulip family, the fleet of Black Horse Island, and the fleet of Iron Hoof Island arrived. One after another, a large number of fleets transported knight and civilians to the Heart Island. Paris stood in front of the dark and deep magic gate, feeling an unimaginable shock. Although she was not interested in history, novels, and the like, she also knew that the magic transmission array belonged to the legendary and powerful magic creation, but it really appeared in front of her. Usually, when she was in contact with the Guild of Magic, those mages had to struggle for a long time to release a small fireball. Even if it was a great mage, the impact of casting spells was very slight, not as powerful as her own flying and flashing moves. Even the magic shooter Chi did not feel too amazing. After all, she rarely saw a Chi fight. However, at this moment, facing the magic gate, she deeply felt the incredible power of magic. She heard from Chris Truth that in this era, the magic network had shrunk and magic had withered. If the level of the magic network in the era of the Moon Empire was restored, it would truly reflect the incredible power of magic creation. Captain Paris, what are you thinking about? Speaking of the devil, the vice president of the Guild of Magic, Chris, came to the magic gate from the Association of Magic camp. I'm thinking about the horror of magic. Magic is the most direct embodiment of truth, and truth is the deepest mystery of the world, unfathomable. But as a mage, exploring the truth and taming magic is our lifelong pursuit. Although you are not a mage, you should also pursue the truth. Oh, reading those magic books and research notes, that's not my hobby. When it came to books, Paris had a headache. So no longer delayed, she directly called the knight of the patrol group to escort the serfs in line, carrying goods or pushing wheelbarrows to the magic gate. The knight, who had long been notified, was constantly rushing among the serfs. When you go in, your body will be out of control, but don't be nervous. Hold the goods in your hands, hold the handlebars, and you can walk out in the blink of an eye. The first time you pass through the transmission array, you may experience dizziness, but you can recover after a short rest. Even so, there were still many serfs standing in front of the magic gate, cowering and not daring to move forward. At this time, the whip in the knight's hand would mercilessly strike the ground and whip the serf. If the serf still didn't move forward, the next whip would hit the serf. Hitting people was an inhumane act, but sometimes if one didn't do it, it would be impossible to drive a serf who had never seen the world. Don't be afraid. The teleportation magic circle doesn't eat people. Paris joined the promotion with a new magic creation, the loudspeaker. Once you walk through this door, you will have the status of a free citizen. Sir Overlord will give you land that belongs to you. The fruits of the harvest after farming will all belong to you. You only need to pay 1/20th of the tax to obtain the protection of the knight. In order to avoid being whipped, in order to gain the status of a freeman in the land, even the most timid serf had to bite the bullet and rush into the magic gate. When the serfs entered the magic gate one after another, the subsequent serfs, driven by inertia, stepped into the magic gate one after another, and there was no more commotion. Very soon, the serfs all entered the heart reed transmission array, and everything went smoothly. The knight also entered one after another. Paris was ready to step in at the last moment. To be honest, she was actually a little scared. So she quietly came to the work camp of the Association of Mages and watched Chris and the others busily collecting information about the magic gate. This was the task assigned by Chi. The heart reed transmission array was only an experimental product. More information needed to be collected to perfect the magic transmission array, this great magic creation. Is there any news from the reed marshes? Paris asked. Chris nodded. Everyone safely crossed the heart reed transmission array. Except for some serfs with poor health who vomited and dizziness, there were no other problems. How long will the Association of Mages work here? It will take a long time. The collection of information about the magic gate is very complicated, but we only need to send a group of mages here. I also plan to go to Flame Island today. His Highness has sent a message that there are more and more ancient mages killing the moon people. He needs me to go to the Association of Mages to help manage. Well, that's good. I'll go first. See you on Flame Island. See you on Flame Island. Deep breath. Crossing the magic gate. Suddenly, a feeling of weightlessness lingered around Paris. She opened her eyes, but she couldn't see anything around her, only occasional flashes of light. The feeling of claustrophobia made her quite uncomfortable, but fortunately, this feeling only lasted for a short moment. Then, as if her body was thrown out, she regained her sight. Regaining the power to control her body, she quickly twisted her waist as if jumping from a high place, and landed steadily on the wooden planks that covered half of the lake. Patter. The wooden planks shook a little when her boots landed. The sky was blue, the sun was hot and unrestrained, and the surroundings were bustling with serfs who had just arrived and were reorganizing their ranks. A faint magic door stood on the surface of the lake behind her. Around the lake were simple wooden houses arranged like a building block game. Further away, there was a dense and endless forest, and the mountain ranges stretched towards the horizon. Captain Paris, welcome to Flame Island's reed marshes. A Viscount Sky Knight, who was in charge of reception, was leading a squad of knight to patrol the entire reed marshes. His Highness has ordered that the knight of the patrol squad will be stationed in the reed marshes, responsible for maintaining the security of the reed marshes and building Reed City. Paris held back her curiosity and replied, "Do I need to go to Fire City to visit His Highness?" "No need. His Highness will come to the reed marshes at night for a gathering of his followers, and then you can listen to His Highness's instructions. If Captain Paris isn't tired, you can immediately take over the security here. I still need to patrol the camp of Oxtail Dominion, and I'm really too busy." "Then leave it to me." Paris immediately went into work mode. She gathered the knight of the patrol squad, and then began to patrol the camp of Flame Lord in the reed marshes, arranging the serfs' living quarters according to their ranks, and establishing a strict order of entry and exit. After a while, the order in the camp of Flame Lord quickly stabilized. The camp of Oxtail Dominion next door also quickly quieted down. Before they knew it, night had fallen. With a majestic and inviolable dragon roar, Liszt, who was riding the invisible dragon Bard, descended from the sky. He signaled Bard to find a Chi and see if she needed help. Surrounded by the night, he arrived at the camp of Flame Lord to inspect the first batch of immigrants who had passed through the teleportation array. He also sent a knight to the camp of Oxtail Dominion, inviting the Marquis of Oxtail and the others to a gathering. Half an hour later, a barbecue gathering began around a roaring bonfire. All the nobles of Oxtail Dominion and Flame Lord gathered here and barbecued meat by themselves. Only Liszt, Lee William, Paris, Chris, and other viscounts and great sorcerers were gathered at a table, and the servants were responsible for barbecuing and serving dishes. "Father, how do you feel coming to Flame Island?" Liszt asked with a smile, raising a glass of beer. Chapter 903. This chapter is Brightly Lit Life I, and will be updated. Liszt only needed to take charge of a general direction for the construction of Flame Island, such as building roads, hygiene, and so on. His followers were the ones in charge of the development and construction. He was responsible for urging them loudly from behind. "We need to build a road here as soon as possible. The Golden Dragon Valley needs to mine ores immediately, put it at the top of the priority list. The construction of the Dragon Valley must also be put on the agenda. I need to see you busy. Advisor Gort, the plantation must be fully developed, and the rubber tree transplant must be prepared as soon as possible. The first thing you do when you come to Flame Island is to preside over the development of the plantation, and transfer all the Sprite Worm stocks from Black Horse Island and Hot Spring Island to Infernal City. Also take care of the native elves of Flame Island." President Chris, is the cultivation of the crystal Cyathea not completed? The Guild of Magic is too inefficient. I hope you can immediately reorganize the research topics of the association, and pull Lars and the other great mages who are getting dizzy from studying nature magic to topics that are beneficial to the territory. Captain Duarte, the incorporation of the Moon's layers can continue, and don't forget to track down the whereabouts of the statues. We haven't found the hands of 3 statues. The leader moved his mouth and the subordinates ran all over the place. This was basically the current situation of the development of Flame Island. However, under the temptation of war glory, no one complained. On the contrary, all the immigrants of the Flame territory were busy. It was too easy to obtain war glory. Compared to fighting on the battlefield, they only needed to do engineering, draw maps, and incorporate the Moon's layers to get war glory. For the knight, the danger was not as great as hunting in the forest. Using benefits to guide people was far easier to arouse the enthusiasm of followers and subjects than using strength to oppress them. This was a truth that Liszt understood long ago. His subordinates worked hard and he had leisure time. He allocated time to train with the 4-headed dragon, cultivated feelings with the man-eating tree dragon elf Carly, and eliminated some powerful World of Warcraft. Time flew and it was already mid-May. News came from Black Horse Island that the negotiation team of the Eagle Kingdom had arrived. "Father, please preside over this negotiation on my behalf." Liszt went directly to Tulip Island, which was under development, and found Marquis Oxtail. He was the Dragon Knight, the future king of the Fire Kingdom. Naturally, it was not suitable for him to attend the negotiation. William replied without hesitation, "All right." Subsequently, this was the second time he rode on a dragon. It was still the gray iron dragon. List now liked to ride an adult gray-mouthed iron dragon with a wingspan of 60 meters. It looked more domineering. Similarly, the fire dragon Leo possessed him, the formless dragon Bard followed him, and the light green gemstone dragon stayed behind. After passing through the Heart Reed teleportation formation and galloping, he arrived at Black Horse Island. On the way, the father and son had already determined the bottom line of the negotiation. List only needed to show his face and entertain the negotiation team with a banquet. After that, he could stay behind the scenes and wait for the results of the negotiation. The head of the negotiation team of the Eagle Kingdom was a marquis from the royal family, Alexander Moonlight Silver. The deputy head was the foreign minister of the Grey Iron Duchy, a marquis from the Grey Iron family, Perlo Grey Iron. During the banquet, Duke Piero, who had spent more than a month as a captive, was also arranged between the seats. He could even participate in the negotiations in person. After all, he was still the Duke of the Grey Iron Duchy. Even if he returned home, he would almost be thrown out of office by his family and ministers. Losing the dragon was a sin that even the ruler of a country could not afford to bear. "Perlo, how is the situation in the country?" Duke Piero asked hopefully. The Eagle Kingdom had finally sent someone to negotiate. He would soon be free. Perlo glanced at his former lord. His captivity did not make him gaunt and dim. On the contrary, Duke Piero's face was ruddy. During his time on Black Horse Island, the food was good. He thought he would not eat or drink. Who knew that he would fall in love with the food here? He would eat a lot of food every day except for potions and World of Warcraft meat. Duke. Perlo used a strange title. He used to call him Your Highness. Duke Piero's face suddenly turned cold. A bad feeling quickly rose from the bottom of his heart. "Perlo, what's going on?" The atmosphere of the banquet was not lively. Only Marquis Lee William and Marquis Alexander were chatting. Perlo replied in a low voice, "We will try our best to ransom you back to our country, but I hope that your excellency can conduct yourself with dignity. At this point, the Grey Iron family can no longer bear any more losses. This negotiation will be led by Marquis Alexander." "What do you mean?" Marquis Piero's face instantly turned red. His voice unconsciously became louder, attracting the attention of everyone at the banquet. But he quickly returned to normal and continued to talk as if he did not see the quarrel between Piero and Perlo. Perlo coughed, a little embarrassed. "This is the family's decision, please don't blame me. You caused the current situation because of the royal family's war. Marquis Alexander will represent the royal family and deal with it. I hope the Duke will not do anything embarrassing." Duke Piero was about to fly into a rage, but he couldn't vent his anger. Chapter 904. It was normal that they could not come to any conclusion after a whole day. Since it was a negotiation, they had to argue for a few days. However, in the evening, Duke Piero came to visit List. List happened to be chatting with William over tea, so he invited him into the study. The study of the Thorn Castle was huge. It was filled with all kinds of books and it was full of art. It was said that the study was the best place to reflect a man's character. List's study was the portrayal of a gentleman in his inner world. "Duke Piero, you'll be free in a few days. What brings you here at this time?" List gestured for the Duke to sit. Piero did not stand on ceremony and sat down. He took a cup of green tea from a servant and drank half of it. "I'm afraid you two are laughing at me in your hearts. As a sinner who lost the dragon, even if I can go back, my position as a duke will come to an end." He was right. List did laugh at him in his heart, but he did not say it out loud. There's always a winner and a loser in a war. "Duke Piero, I'm sorry to have participated in an unwise battle to slay a dragon. In fact, my target was either Alex White Iron or Alonso Cyclamen. I did choose the wrong target. I admit that you took the Grey King away." Duke Piero nodded and said calmly, "The change from a king to a prisoner made me see many problems clearly. To be honest, if it wasn't for the dignity of the Eagle royal family, I'm afraid no one would come to save me." List and William looked at each other, but they did not say anything. While the father and son were chatting, William Lee was still complaining about how difficult it was to negotiate. The Eagle Kingdom and the Grey Iron Duchy only wanted to save face at the lowest price. They did not care about Duke Piero. Therefore, they did not agree to such an exorbitant price. Duke Piero continued, I used to hate Prince Liszt. I hated him day and night. But today I was betrayed by someone close to me. My hatred for Prince Piero is gone. Being captured and defeated means that the winner gets everything. The most hateful thing is betrayal. William pretended to comfort him. Considering the interests of the family, they might have their own difficulties. Marquis, do you think I'm talking about family betrayal? Duke Piero shook his head. No, no, no. I resent them for betraying me, especially my son. But if I were him, I would do the same. Preserving the family strength is more important than saving a captive like me. Then who are you talking about? It's Adonis Moonlight Silver. The Eagle King? Why did he betray you? Liszt still did not understand Piero's intentions. At first he thought that Piero wanted to rely on him out of anger, but that was impossible. After all, he still had to exchange him for the dragon elf. How could a useless sky knight be compared to a dragon elf? Piero quickly explained, I used to think that Adonis, Lloyd and I were an iron triangle. As the two most loyal vassal states of the Eagle Kingdom, Lure and I both grew up in the Eagle Kingdom. We were both selected for the Dragon Knight selection program. It's just that I lacked talent and didn't get the Grey King's approval. Although he was middle-aged, Piero still felt that the Iron Triangle was like a family. So when the Eagle royal family launched a dragon-slaying war, he and Lure Purple Copper immediately responded. Unfortunately, Lure died in battle and he was captured. I thought that even if my family chose to abandon me, Adonis would not. I fought for the dignity of the Eagle royal family and for Adonis' friendship. But now I've become an insignificant nobody. Adonis didn't even send anyone to comfort me. His voice gradually rose. Piero became more agitated as he spoke. This is humiliation, this is betrayal. He betrayed my friendship and the interests of the Iron Duchy of Grey. Traitors do not deserve to be forgiven. So, Duke Piero, what are you trying to say? Liszt did not care much about the emotional world of an old Chinibu. It was not like the ups and downs of a night novel. I want to take revenge on Adonis. I need your help, Your Highness. Piero finally made his intentions clear. How can I help you? I can give you all the information I know about the Eagle Kingdom, including the grandson of Marquis Bull. In exchange for your support, I will return to the Iron Duchy. In the future, the Iron Duchy will serve the Fire Kingdom. Without waiting for Liszt to speak, Lee William said directly, Duke Piero, do you think this is possible? The Iron Duchy has already lost its dragon, which means that your country will cease to exist in a few years. Even if we support your return, what will you use to suppress the country and repay the Fire Kingdom? Of course there will be repayment. Tell me about it. The grandson of Marquis Bull, André, is attacking a new dragon. As far as I know, he will succeed soon. If I am willing to give you the information about this dragon, would you be willing to protect the Iron Duchy for 20 years? 20 years. I believe that within 20 years, Your Highness will destroy the Eagle Kingdom. Duke Piero said with a strange look of determination. If the Iron Duchy has not found a new dragon by then, I am willing to give up all my wealth and become an ordinary duke in the Fire Kingdom. After listening to Duke Piero's words, Liszt gradually narrowed his eyes and began to think about whether what the other party said was true or false. Originally, he didn't care much about André. He was the enemy of the Sapphire Grand Duke. No matter how talented he was, he would first retaliate against the Sapphire family. Moreover, even if he became a Dragon Knight, what could he do? Would he dare to act violently in front of a Dragon Knight with 4 dragons? But the news of André attacking a new dragon aroused a strong interest in him. What new dragon is he attacking? A very magical dragon. Although it is not comparable to His Highness Invisible Dragon, it is more magical than ordinary metal dragons and gem dragons. If not for this dragon, how could the Marquis Bull dare to rebel against the Sapphire family? Duke Piero leaned back in his chair. As long as Liszt was interested, he would have the initiative. Lee William suddenly asked, Duke Piero, do you think the Fire Kingdom can destroy the Eagle Kingdom in 20 years? With the momentum of His Highness Liszt's development, I think there is hope. Of course, it is more of a bet on the future. Without a dragon, the Iron Duchy will lose the kingdom sooner or later. Instead of becoming an ordinary noble, why not gamble? The Holy Dragon Knight that has not been born for many years has appeared. Why can't the Eagle Kingdom be destroyed? What he said was very reasonable. Liszt could not refute and did not want to refute. First tell me what dragon André is attacking. If I am interested, it is not impossible to agree to your conditions. After a little hesitation, Duke Piero nodded, I believe in His Highness' integrity. The dragon that Andre conquered is the biggest secret of the Eagle Kingdom. I accidentally overheard his drunken confession at a banquet with Adonis and secretly investigated it. Only then did I discover this secret. Chapter 905. Mithril was light as a feather, adamantine was indestructible, and orichalcum was indestructible. These were the three types of magical metals on the legendary continent. Currently, only these three types of magical metals were known to exist on the market. Of course, List still had a batch of magical metals from the Sun's Child, blue iron and plastic aluminum. These magic metals were very compatible with magic and were excellent magic conductors. They also had unique properties. Whether it was to create magical equipment or standard weapons, they were all top-notch raw materials. Therefore, the price was always high and only a few nobles could enjoy it. There were no magical metal dragons in the three kingdoms. It was said that only the empire of the legendary continent had magical metal dragons: mithril dragons, adamantine dragons, and orichalcum dragons. He did not expect that the Eagle Kingdom would actually find an orichalcum dragon, and even let André Sapphire, the grandson of Marquis Bull, attack it. Very soon. Duke Piero told him what he knew, but he hid the location of the orichalcum. Andrea's mother was the daughter of a marquis in the Kingdom of Eagle. They got to know each other because of the war, so Andrea learned the skills of the Iron Knight in the territory of the marquis when he was a child. It was hard to say whether Andre's parents got married because of love, or if the Eagle Kingdom could arrange it. In any case, the Bull family had long been involved with the Eagle Kingdom. In the end, Andre was born. Speaking of which, Andre was not only extremely talented but he was also extremely lucky. One time he had followed his lord into the mountains to hunt, and they had accidentally discovered traces of an orichalcum dragon. Of course, although the orichalcum dragon showed a certain degree of affinity towards Andre, its prideful personality would not allow it to pay attention to a nobody, much less allow someone to ride it. Andre's fortuitous encounter was quickly made known to the elders of his family, as well as to the Eagle royal family, who were watching closely from behind. Adonis had originally planned to capture the orichalcum dragon and slowly subdue it, but he discovered that the orichalcum dragon was extremely powerful. After all, the orichalcum dragon was indestructible, and its battle prowess far exceeded that of the white iron dragon. Even without the Dragon Knight of the royal family was defeated and fled. Therefore, in the end, the Eagle royal family decided to support Andre to ride the dragon. They had spent a large amount of resources to help Andre conquer the orichalcum dragon, and they had already reached a crucial point. It was said that as long as one had the chance to engage in a spiritual battle, they would definitely be acknowledged by the orichalcum dragon and become a powerful magical metal dragon knight. I need to think about the pros and cons. You can go back and wait. The negotiation will not be completed in a day or two, not to mention that it involves supporting you to return to your country and continue to be a duke. I believe that as long as your highness is willing, the Eagle Kingdom will not dare to stop you. The Iron and Steel Ridge should be very willing to see a weak eagle. The Blast Furnace Castle is the same. Only a weak eagle can bow its head, so they have more energy to deal with the more distant kingdom, Duke Piero added. List smiled. I also hope so. Duke Piero, my father will contact you more often. He will be in charge of the Fire Kingdom's diplomatic affairs. Duke Piero, who was ready to turn over a new leaf, was sent away. Liszt and Llewellyn carefully discussed for a long time in the study. Finally, Liszt made the decision: reach an agreement with Piero as soon as possible. Let him tell me the location of the orichalcum dragon and Andre. I'll personally confirm the authenticity. If it's true, then we must get the orichalcum dragon. Will the Eagle Kingdom agree to our request? Llewellyn was a little uncertain. Reduce Duke Piero's ransom. Just one dragon spirit will do. But the Eagle Kingdom must sign a contract with the power of the contract to ensure that Piero will continue to be the Duke of the Grey Iron Duchy and open the trade channel between the Grey Iron Duchy and the Fire Kingdom. I'm afraid that the Eagle Kingdom won't let Piero live for long. As long as I ride the orichalcum dragon, it doesn't matter if Piero is dead or not. Do you really expect him to send the wealth of the Grey Iron Duchy to me? Liszt liked to grasp the essence of things. The essence of this issue was the orichalcum dragon. As long as he got the orichalcum dragon, he would make a lot of money. Llewellyn was used to making decisions based on Liszt's decision. How should we negotiate with the Eagle Kingdom about the dragon-slaying war? The Eagle Kingdom must issue a statement of apology and officially recognize the legal status of the Fire Kingdom. As for compensation, a batch of resources will suffice. Even if I can't get it, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'll get it myself in the future. Piero was right about one thing. I hope to destroy the Eagle Kingdom within 20 years. Llewellyn frowned. As your father, I'm very happy that you're ambitious. But aren't you biting off more than you can chew? I don't think so. Although the Fire Kingdom hasn't been established yet, it's weak and has a small population. However, it doesn't lack high-end combat power. 20 years is enough for me to train a few Dragon Knights. By then, with my ability, it won't be a problem for me to lead a large number of dragons and Dragon Knights to conquer the northeast corner of the legendary continent. He shook the teacup in his hand. His gaze seemed to be peeking into the long river of fate. The fate of countless people flowed slowly in the river. His voice became faintly discernible. To put it nicely, this world is ruled by the knight. However, to the dragon-raising family, the knight is just a dedicated servant for the family. The dragon is the core of the world. Serfs, commoners, and knight work hard and fight. They just contribute food, clothing, and other resources to a small number of families. The so-called night war, the so-called country and the people, is just a game played by a group of people standing at the top of the pyramid. Father, because of my appearance, the Tulip family is destined to be like the Flame family in the future. They'll become the small group of people who control the game. Chapter 906. This chapter was updated by Baby 666. There was no one who didn't desire dragons. Just like how Liszt was still attracted by the orichalcum despite having so many dragons. He couldn't help but start his plan. When Llewellyn heard that the Tulip family also had a chance to ride a dragon, his heartbeat sped up. However, he quickly felt relieved. The kingdom had to carry out the Dragon Knight plan. As long as the Tulip family had a talented child, it was natural for them to be selected. Although the Bull Marquis was a bad choice, they were still related by blood. Furthermore, as long as the soul imprint belonged to the Flame family, outsiders would just be employees no matter how they rode the dragon. They couldn't possibly ride the dragon away. Llewellyn's thoughts had changed a lot recently. He no longer paid attention to the Tulip family. After all, the Flame family only had Liszt. As long as Liszt was in power, his protection and favor for the Tulip family would never end. Perhaps one day the Tulip family would become a true dragon-rearing family. Furthermore, there was one important point. Whether it was the Tulip family or the Flame family, they were both his descendants. Liszt was his son. To Llewellyn, life was already perfect. Now he just hoped that his eldest son Levis could also enjoy wealth. His youngest son Lytton could also bask in some glory. Your brother's talent is limited. The future of the Tulip family will be in Richard's hands sooner or later. I hope Richard can raise them up. As his uncle, you have to guide him. Don't worry. As long as Richard has talent, I won't let it go to waste. Liszt was quite fond of this cute nephew of his. Due to his transmigration, he didn't have much affection for his family. However, he had watched Richard grow up at 2 years old. His mental age wasn't that young anymore. Although he had never been a parent, his feelings for children had gradually changed. Young people always find children annoying, but older people usually like children very much. Liszt, who looked down on the world, was no exception. 2 contacts. Duke Piero quickly gave André and the orichalcum dragons information after the benefits were clear. This location is adjacent to the Snowwind Mountain Principality, a vassal state of the Kingdom of Yellowstone. This area is the undeveloped southern region of the wasteland of the Eagle Kingdom. The terrain here is complex and undulating. There are many cliff-like mountain ranges. The Copper Mountain dragons live here. It seems that the Eagle royal family calls this place the Hungduan Mountains. Hungduan Mountain? Liszt raised his eyebrows as he recalled that he was no stranger to this place. He had read about it in a book collected by the Bull Marquis. The book was written by a sorcerer of the Silver Moon Gathering named Sven Truth and given to Alonso Cyclamen as a gift. It had no title, but on the cover was a dragon with its head and tail attached. It was unknown how it had ended up on Marquis Bull's desk, but Liszt had coincidentally taken it away during the attack on Juniper Castle. He called the book the Dragon Raising Handbook, which recorded all the research the Silver Moon Assembly had done on dragons. The Silver Moon Assembly was a magic organization of the Eagle Kingdom. The reason why Sven had given Alonso the book was probably because he wanted to invest in Alonso before he became a Dragon Knight. As a candidate for the Dragon Knight project, Alonso was obviously a person worthy of investment in the early days, and he had indeed succeeded in riding a dragon. The Dragon Raising Handbook mentioned that Sven had studied the Earth Dragon in the Hengduan Mountains. Thinking of this, List's eyes flashed slightly. He said calmly, "Isn't there a Earth Dragon in the Hengduan Mountains?" Earth Dragon? Duke Piero was stunned for a moment, but he did not panic. He was just very surprised. "Your Highness, you know something about the Hengduan Mountains?" "Why?" "I don't know if there are Earth Dragons in the Hengduan Mountains, but when I sent the rats to investigate, they did find out that there was once an Earth Dragon in the Hengduan Mountains. Then the Hengduan Mountains became the residence of the Copper Mountain Dragon, and it has been living there for nearly 3 years." Piero wanted to ask why List knew about the Hengduan Mountains, but it was obvious that List had no intention of explaining. He just nodded. "Go on." "One of my rats mixed with Andre as a servant. In order to ride a dragon, Andre did a lot of research with the help of the Eagle Kingdom. The key to riding in Copper Mountain Dragon is the quality of the knight. It needs to be unyielding, indomitable, fearless, and know how to sacrifice oneself. Only in this way can the Copper Mountain Dragon be moved." Every time Duke Piero mentioned the qualities of the Copper Mountain Dragon, List's face would turn a little darker. Although he had these qualities, they were not perfect. Obviously, there was almost no hope of riding in Copper Mountain Dragon using conventional methods. Even if he knew this would be the result, he still felt bad. So how far did Andre go? He did not believe that there was really someone else with such high qualities other than himself. Duke Piero laughed sarcastically. "Andre may be the descendant of a traitor, but he is really an excellent knight. In order to prepare a kind of bird egg that the Copper Mountain Dragon likes to eat, he personally climbed a cliff and went into a cave to get the egg while being attacked by a group of World of Warcraft birds. His skin was pecked to pieces. There were many similar actions. As expected, he was willing to sacrifice himself for the Orichalcum dragons." The location of the Copper Mountain Dragon was confirmed. List then started to prepare the strategy, leaving the negotiation team to Lee William. The smoke mission was to force all 3 kingdoms to acknowledge the Fire Kingdom. The emissaries from Steel Ridge and Furnace Castle had not arrived yet, so there was no need to hurry with the negotiation team. Duke Piero could not let him go now in case he had ulterior motives. The so-called Copper Mountain Dragon was just a cover to trap List. "The Copper Mountain Dragon is very strong, I need help." The Grey Iron Dragon stayed on Black Horse Island for the time being to deter the negotiation team and Duke Piero, and also to hide his whereabouts. He decided to take the Light Emerald Dragon Ethan and let Ethan set off from Flame Island towards the legendary continent. Ethan's speed was not fast enough, and following the Invisible Dragon would slow the team down. He himself would take the Little Fire Dragon Leo, the Invisible Dragon Bard, and the Magic Shooter Chi and follow closely behind. The whole journey is expected to take a week to get the Copper Mountain Dragon. By the way, I can contact Yevich. I don't know how his investigation in Snowwind Mountain Principality is going. When Ethan started to set off, List quickly dealt with the official business of the territory, then filled up with supplies, appeared briefly on Black Horse Island and quietly left. The Fire Islands were about 1,700 kilometers away from the legendary continent. But their geographical location was much better than that of the Sapphire Islands. In the middle of the straight sailing journey, there were other islands as supply points and outposts. After flying for 500 kilometers, List and his party landed in a large archipelago, the unnamed Third Archipelago. There were many islands, but they were fragmented. None of them was larger than Black Horse Island, and the development potential was very low. However, it was a good supply point. In the future, the Fire Kingdom might be able to build several port cities here. Of course, if the magic transmission array connected directly to the legendary continent was opened, it didn't matter whether the island was supplied or not. After a short stop, they flew another 500 kilometers and saw a large island. The area of the island should not be smaller than Coral Island from a high altitude, and it was also a place suitable for development as a supply island. After flying another 700 kilometers, they would reach the coastline of the legendary continent. There was no human habitation here, or rather, there was no human habitation within 100 kilometers. Hundreds of kilometers deep was the small village at the edge of Snowwind Mountain Principality, the hunter's village that Yevich had encountered before. List took out a map. List and Chi studied it for a moment. Where we are is the border between the Eagle Kingdom and the Yellowstone Kingdom. To the west is Snowwind Mountain Principality, and to the northwest is the direction of the Hengduan Mountains. But we first have to determine the location of the Rhine River. The Hengduan Mountains is the birthplace of the Rhine River, so we won't get lost along the river. While talking, a dragon roared. The light emerald dragon Ethan had followed the connection with List's mind and came to gather. It arrived at the legendary continent a day ahead of time and rested in the nearby forest. Achi, you ride Bart, I'll ride Ethan. Let's find the mouth of the Rhine River first. Yes. Woo. 2 people and 3 dragons continued the journey of finding and riding the dragon. At this very moment, on the top of a cliff thousands of kilometers away, a giant golden dragon that was in deep sleep suddenly woke up from its snoring. An indescribable feeling made its heart palpitate. But as it woke up, the feeling quickly disappeared. It looked at the bottom of the cliff doubtfully. A knight was flying and flashing beside a gray-white tent. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.